out here. Uh-oh, Richard. Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me.
Keep my name out your fucking mouth.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
It was a G.I. Jane jump.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth.
I'm going to, okay?
I know I've
Okay.
let you down. I've been a fool to myself. I thought that I could live for no one else. But now, through all the hurt and pain, it's time for me to respect the ones you love me more than anything. So with sadness in my heart, feel the best thing I could do is end it all and leave forever. What's done is done, it feels so bad. What once was happy now is sad. I'll never love again, my world is ending.
Oh,
I
I'm good. This is gonna be an interesting sort of installment here because I have a few different things I want to hit on, and you can kind of go in any order and it'll bridge into the next one. But I think maybe, well, I don't know. Who am I kidding? There's really only one place to start with this, which is so as has already been talked about relentlessly, but I wasn't going to let the opportunity pass us by. There was an Academy Awards on Sunday.
There was an Academy Awards, yes.
Yeah, which, oh man. So, okay, yeah, obviously there we have the slap. We could talk about that. I'm sure we're about
Can't
to.
avoid it. Can't avoid it.
Can't avoid it. However, here's what is interesting, Data. Well, actually, let me ask you first. Were you watching all this live, and where were you if you were?
Watching it at Jesse's place.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you saw the entire, you saw basically the entire broadcast. You were there. You didn't know what was about to be happening.
I got sent the video of the slap first.
No kidding.
Because I think, or of the cursing out. Sorry, of like the cursing part, the part that got cut out when we got censored or whatever.
Right.
So I got sent that video, and I was like, oh, yeah. Well, that wasn't great.
No, that's actually the funny part too, is that that's a good point. This will make more sense when I explain kind of my situation, but no, like a lot of people, like I guess if you're watching that whole moment unfold from the American side, which probably most people hearing this have, you wouldn't necessarily know everything that was happening until after the fact, because there was that whole cutout. But yeah, let me start here, because this is gonna maybe shock. Well, it should shock you. It should shock everybody, but there's reasons for it. I wasn't watching it like at all.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time probably since, I don't know, like 2004, 3 earlier. I was not like watching the entire Oscar broadcast live, at least to some extent. I didn't even start it. I didn't see any of it really until like the last 20 minutes, because
oh wow.
Long story short, I had a friend's birthday thing on Saturday, and I ended up just not really coming home for a long time. And then I was still at my friend's the next day, and I was like, oh, well, I'll just watch the Oscars here. And I could not, and this is like a whole separate conversation, I could not for the life of me figure out how to get this fucking thing on the TV. It actually still blows my goddamn mind
You have to
that
have Hulu with live TV. That's the only way now.
yeah, well, yeah, but like even if that's what I'm saying, it's like that. I mean, it's technically not the only way, but like there's no way that's straightforward, simple, and easily accessible. And like unless you literally have on-air television or a cable,
or
which
like
less and less people do.
Get an antenna or something.
Yeah, that's what I mean by on air. But like I mean, I just don't get it because for all the fucking bitching and whining and moaning and hand holding about, we got to make this a bigger show and more people see it. It's like, then why the fuck do you not make it like free and easily streamable, like on YouTube or whatever? Like, are you people so
Hulu Live
goddamn
TV
dense?
with no ads is $75 a month.
But like I have Hulu. Most people have Hulu. If they wanted to make it a Hulu,
it's not like accessible to the masses.
Right. But I'm saying like if they wanted to make it a Hulu exclusive or a Disney Plus exclusive, because it is ABC, which I mean they own both. I just don't. I have both those services. I fucking pay for both those services. I tried logging into both those services. Yes, as you said, you need a special level of Hulu to do it. That is absurd. Absolutely fucking absurd. I cannot believe that they're of this mindset. And I don't think it's intentional. I think it's literally the type of like the doik corporate circle jerking where no one thinks things through and everyone has a different agenda that leads to decisions like this. So in other words, if they got their act together even a little bit, they would know that was a terrible idea, but nobody was fucking paying attention to it. And yeah, it's absolutely insane. And I don't know, maybe they got some sort of bump in those subscriptions, but given just the general numbers and the general like interest, I highly doubt it. And again, in the wake of what happened, which we're about to get a little bit more into, they have a really good chance next year to have, it's not only that, but I also think there's going to be incredible movies next year. They have a really good chance next year to have a really successful show, the most successful one in like the last like 5-6 years. And I feel like they're not going to seize upon it because they're still going to make the same types of boneheaded basic decisions. Anyway, there's a lot of bonehead decisions to go around, but like I was just starting with the basic of like, how the fuck do you watch this if you're a modern person in the year 2022? Well, I couldn't figure it out. I'm sure if I was home, which I wasn't, key point, I would have found some way through my laptop to get some like weird stream. It's hard to get like those sort of like third-hand streams. You can't really do that on a Roku, which is what I was trying to use at my friend's place. So I was like, all right, fuck it. I'll just kind of pay attention to Twitter and I'll get home soon. And blah, blah, blah. But this Oscar show kind of went by. I know for the people watching it, apparently it was slow, but from my perspective, not tuning in, it felt like it was going by fast. I felt like every time I looked at Twitter, it was like 10 more awards have been given and et cetera, et cetera. Now, but I saw something like right as I'm on the way home about Will Smith. And so I was like, what? Okay, who cares? And then when I get home, I'm immediately confronted with the news. And I catch like the end of the stream where I see Best Picture, basically, or the last like acting award and shit. And all those were very boring and uninteresting to me. But I know it's a movie podcast, but seriously, this is where we're at. And I'll try to get more into it. But yeah, so I eventually see the whole feed, what was cut, like everyone else has. We're now recording this Wednesday, March 30th. So people have had days now to digest this. The takes have counter takes. The counter takes have counter takes. The counter takes have counter takes. It's this. I mean, I think that one of the reasons this is such a big thing is not even just the nature of the event itself. It's the nature of it. It like hits the right sort of notes of testing people who are mostly not tested, what their actual like ethics or their actual like sort of thought processes are about things. And it's been very interesting to see that play out in real time. So Dana, not to put all the pressure on you, what is your thoughts on what happened exactly? Like, how did it process to you? what do you feel about it? Who are you angry at and why? Like, I don't know.
Well,
I'll give you the floor.
well, I want to start with, I don't want to take away. I think Amy Schumer, Regina Hall, and Wanda Sykes did a really good job. It was a little bit all over the place, but as far as Oscars hosts go, they were definitely not the worst. I was very entertained, and they were cute and funny, as was expected. You know, Ariana DeBose making history. I also really loved Beyonce opening the show with the tennis ball colored girls in the tennis ball colored outfits, where like everything is this neon tennis ball color. I loved that opening video with Beyonce performance. All of that said, no one's ever going to talk about those things because we're also obsessed with the slap. And I'm not surprised that some conspiracy theories have already popped up about Chris Rock having or not having a cheek pad. Have you heard this? A cheek pad?
No, I have not. What?
There's some internet conspiracy theories that zoom in, and they say that because his hands were behind his back and he was kind of wincing, and they made it look like he has like a triangular shaped eye patch underneath his left eye, as in he's
Chris
like
Rock
expecting
is just
it. Yeah, absolutely. It's I knew it.
I think I know what. Yeah.
It's the way that the photo is, accompanied by possibly a teensy touch of Botox. He's a performer. I'm sure he's, got ready for the Oscars.
I think that's what's actually being exposed. That's what I mean. I think that's what's actually being exposed there. It's like people think like Botox, oh, that's a woman thing.
But there's a lot of these conspiracy theories
have
that
it now too.
It was staged. It was staged is the theory. And that he had it. It was staged to the point that he had a fake pad on his cheek and he was smiling and wincing, craving for it, so that ticket sales would go up for his show.
Dude, when Will Smith gets probably suspended, ticket sales did go up for his show. But here's the problem with
is it worth it for Will Smith to get in all this trouble? So Chris Rock can sell
exactly my point.
Tickets?
It's not like if it's fake, they would imply Will Smith is in on it too. And
yes,
Will Smith is like, so far he hasn't faced any consequence except for the reputational one. Like, if this was a stunt, they would have revealed.
Well, the Academy said they're launching an investigation into the slap, and I'm like, what's to investigate? We all saw the slap.
Oh no,
I'm sure there has to be some kind of repercussions.
Then
you can't just not get in trouble. They revoke your SAG membership for a year. Like, you can't work for a year. What does that mean? Oh, well, it's not a SAG Awards. I guess they can't have anything to do with SAG.
No, they can revoke and suspend your membership at the Academy, which has significant consequences. Like, more than I even thought it did. I've looked into this now.
What are some of the consequences? I just thought that's like a slap on the wrist to say we're mad at you.
I thought that too, but the reality is, if your membership of the Academy is revoked, you are now ineligible for Academy Awards. So I don't think Will Smith has a movie next year, but let's say the suspension was indefinite or for 3 years, then any movie he makes in the next 3 years would be ineligible for an Oscar. So that would be a very significant thing. I mean, it would effectively make him or less likely to be hired, period, to do any movies, because no one wants to like.
All right, any serious movies. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they wouldn't mind. But like, I don't know.
He could probably do more voiceovers, cartoons and stuff.
See, that's the other thing. Like, so let's take a step back, because I want to walk you through what I feel like is really the nature of this. I mean, there's the people's reactions. That's what I was kind of getting towards, but let me pivot away from that. Maybe we don't even really need to talk about that too much. From the perspective of the Academy and the film industry as a result, they're in a weird spot because, and I'm already seeing now, because like yesterday and this morning, like this is where we're at in the cycle. I guess people's reactions are tied into it. So day one, slap night, Oscar night. And like I said, I was coming into it very out of the loop, but I almost feel like it didn't matter. That's like the weirdest thing about it. I didn't watch the Oscars. The biggest thing in the world in Oscar history happened. And yet it's irrelevant because the moment itself was so its own thing. Like, nobody who actually watched it was more prepared to deal with it than I was. It was like, we were in that sense, like I was on equal footing with everyone else, really. Because everyone else is seeing the full uncensored thing on YouTube as well. Like, it's like, you know what I mean? So I just didn't have that particular experience, but like, so what? Now, where that experience I think most matters, though, is the people that were in that room, because as has been noted, people were kind of didn't know how to react. People weren't sure if it was a bit or not. It felt very quickly like it wasn't because of Will Smith's yelling. But then no one did anything other than like Denzel Washington, a couple of people coming up to Will Smith, talking to him, and then like, you know, presumably him like kind of taking a step away from his seat for a moment. But it was like a huddle. It was like a sports huddle. But, you know, 30 minutes later, he wins the award. He goes up, gives a speech. People have to applaud, or don't have to, but they do applaud.
He gets a standing ovation from a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, this is what I'm saying. And I'm not even trying to get into the morals or judgments of people's behaviors, though they're all kind of, you know, there for you if you want to think about it. And we might talk about it. But that happens. Night after that, day 2, the aftermath, right? Then he's going to parties, was like, oh shit, that was actually very serious. Like, what the fuck happened there? Why did this? And so people are now just begging these questions, right? And there's some people coming to this Will Smith defense, like, oh, he did like, you know, I don't even want to get into that exactly just yet. But either way, that's kind of where the discourse is at. But eventually, by that evening, I believe he had issued his apology statement. Chris Rock issues a apology statement on Twitter. So now, and this is what they'll say. Some people will say, never apologize. I don't agree with that strategy, but the reason people might say that is probably to some degree what happened. Once you've now staked your claim that you have something to be sorry for, that's when everyone else decides it's okay to actually start criticizing you, which is exactly what happened. Because now day 2, you know, Monday or Tuesday, I should say, yesterday, basically, all of a sudden, all the takes start coming. I start seeing like Amy Schumer and Wanda, the hosts, literally being like, I was traumatized by the event. Like, now other people are making it about them. Like, you know, like, and so like, there's this, they're not even necessarily trying to throw Will under the bus explicitly, but that inherently implies like, what Will Smith did wasn't just that he slapped Chris Rock. He slapped all of us. He hurt all of us. And I'm not even, I know I'm making fun of it right now, but like, I'm actually not.
He like hurt all of us. I think they're more like, is everyone at every show I go to now in Middle America, if they don't like my jokes, are they going to come punch me in the face if they don't like it?
Well, that's kind of like the so-called comedians take that I've heard come around. But I'm even going a step further than that, because I'm specifically talking about the Amy and Wanda comments. It's like, who are comedians, granted? So I get why you brought that up, but like, no, it's more like this idea of like the event itself. The stress, the confusion for the people there was traumatizing. And I'm not saying it wasn't. Like, I'm not even trying to make any claim to that effect. I have no problem believing that it was. I can understand that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with talking about that. All I'm saying is these things from the effect point of view, right? Like, what's the effect? What's the effect on the discourse? The effect on the discourse is the phase we're at today, and we'll see how long it lasts. But if this feels like we're just moving through the cycle quicker than normal, but it's probably going to stay here, which is that actually what happened was super fucked up and we're all grieving the situation. And as a result, the call for something to be done about Will be a lot louder than it was on Monday, where there was like this vocal contingent kind of defending him / other people almost being like, who cares, right? Now that's going to change. Like, I mean, Will Smith will still have his defenders, don't get me wrong. If anything, they might get stronger in response to this backlash. But I think now that like the quote pressure that's on the Academy, as we alluded to actually do something will increase, which the last real thing I want to say about this in particular is the sort of, I mean, look, we're not a moral philosophy podcast, though somehow those topics do come up in our discussions. But I mean, for me, as someone who cares a lot about moral philosophy, interestingly enough, I do think these are interesting questions about what happened, because, you know, Chris Rock immediately was like, I don't want to press charges. Now, I think that's, for many reasons, a good thing. I also think, though,
a slap is a slap, but it depends on who you're slapping, right? So For instance, let's take it back to the 60s. I think it was this. Oh no, no. It was the 80s or 90s. You remember actress and heiress Zsa Zsa Gabor? She went to trial, and I don't know if they convicted her or not, but she went to trial for slapping a police officer. She is a 5'5" woman, and the police officer she slapped was 6'2" or something. And for this tiny, tiny woman, she slapped somebody, but she slapped a cop. So a slap is a slap, but you can go to jail depending on if somebody presses charges against a slap, which is, you know what I mean? Like an open palm slap.
Look, so let me put it this way, because that case is interesting as well.
She was convinced she would get away with it because she was a famous actress. She was like, no one's going to put me in jail for slapping someone. I'm tiny and I'm famous and I'm wealthy. So I won't get in trouble,
I don't know the full context of what happened there, but I don't know if it was an unprovoked thing, a joke thing.
No, he was trying to arrest her for driving without a license.
So she was resisting arrest.
She drove away. Yeah, she was resisting and slapped him.
Okay, Dana, with permission, I don't even want to step into any of that one because
No. I'm just using. I don't want to dive deep into the Zsa Zsa Gabor thing, but
no. It's an interesting. I'm glad you brought it up, though. No, I am glad you brought it up.
Still open palm from somebody that's like tiny. And she got in so much trouble for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. I'm glad you did.
Literally like 5'5". I could just flick her away, so tiny.
I'm glad you did.
And she hit some big person.
I'm glad you did bring it up because I do actually think that even though I'm like deciding to because I actually could go down a lot of avenues with that conversation, deciding not to get any further into it, but I'm glad you brought it up nevertheless, because it is a good point to exemplify a different point that I do think is very pertinent to what I was going to say about this issue, which is that there is to me, where I frame my ethics is a lot often in a sense of what's the actual dynamic of a power, but also, what is ultimately the sort of most restorative kind of outcome. There's like a whole branch of this called restorative justice. There's all sorts of things. I'm anti-punitive. This is what I mean about the Chris Rock side of it, him not pressing charges. I'm against that punitive punishment. I'm against even the idea in that from that framework of the quote Academy being punitive towards Will Smith or anybody. However, here's where the conflict comes in. These contradictions are kind of inherent. So when I think of why Chris Rock wouldn't press charges, the quote good reasons I would say there are for that. I'm not saying they had nothing to do with it, but I think it's pretty safe to assume, given the way our culture is and a number of other factors, that the number one reason Chris Rock wouldn't press charges is because it's inherently embarrassing. It's inherently kind of admitting that this hurt you. And I think that's a bad reason. That's number one. I think it always is a bad reason, whether it applies in this case. And then number two, so if Chris Rock's not going to press charges, that basically puts all the onus on the Academy as the only ones with the significant ability to, quote, restore the balance of scales, whatever you want to define justice as in this case, right? And the way I look at it, again, taking a sort of restorative model, a victim-centric model, but not a revenge or punitive model, would say that what's important here is what actually helps reconcile obviously I think of Chris Rock as the victim, but as now has been brought up into the context with Schumer and Sykes and other celebrities and other people that were in the room, they all feel traumatized. And I know it sounds like I'm putting a mocking tone on it because I kind of just can't help it, but I actually don't think that's worth mocking. I actually do think there is a sense to which Will Smith, he said it himself in his own apology. He should apologize to everyone there because everyone there had to be had their show disrupted, had their evening disrupted, had a lot of things disrupted.
They had probably the biggest night of their life, and now no one will talk about any of it except
I've got everyone involving Coda or Dune or any of the movies that won a lot of.
Oh my God, what an acceptance speech! You and I really did. I think I voted for Coda for most. For the most categories in the Cinphomaniac Awards.
Yeah. Can you hold off on that though for 1 sec, Dana? Because I actually do want to ask you about that specifically, but I want to wrap up the Will Smith thing the best I can before we get to that. So No, you're exactly the point is that all these other people were involved in, I mean, I think it's a stretch to then say the American people, the audience watching, who cares? But I just mean like, unless you're talking about, see, I can keep finding exceptions. Unless you are talking about, which I'm sure is true, and I'm sure has already been brought up on Twitter. There are probably people watching it who've been victims of certain types of violence, and watching that, especially when it was totally unexpected, may have been legitimately triggering, and I think that's fair. Nevertheless, the point is, if whether you're talking about Chris Rock or a more extended group of victims, I do think restoring balance between Will Smith and that group or that person is what should be paramount. But because Chris Rock is not as from press charges, meaning he doesn't want the law and the government involved, the best institution to actually mediate this is the Academy. But the problem is that I find is that the most extreme action, which I think has now been clearly put off the table, but maybe not, is the idea of revoking Will Smith's award. When I was originally kind of having this debate with somebody, I didn't realize how consequential a suspension from the Academy actually was. So from my point of view at the time, it was like, oh, well, if you're not going to revoke his award, anything else you do is just kind of meaningless and pointless. And therefore, like, I'm against it on that purpose. Which isn't to say I want him to get his award taken away, but I don't know what else there is that would actually have a significant enough impact to make it feel like, make it feel like something was actually done about this and not just like let it go, right? Or hope everyone just forgets, which they don't even want people to forget that, because that's the other thing. And I don't even take this too cynically. They would be crazy not to try to play this up next year. Like they need it. They need to do that. But yeah, I guess a suspension and depending on the length and all this other things can have some significant consequences. And I'm not telling anyone what they should do or what they should think about it, but I guess, believe that someone should take responsibility for this in an arbitration kind of way. And I guess that's the Academy. So I support them at least coming to do something. What it is, I'll judge when they do it. But yeah, I don't think it's going away from the discourse. It's been fun for people to talk about. Hopefully, as I was just alluding to, that translates, and whether it's because the show does the right thing with it or not, that translates into, hey, let's actually build off this momentum and maybe do some other things. Now, like I said, didn't watch the show, but since then I've, read all the winners. I've seen what's happened. I know the winners are, like you just mentioned, Coda. And this is a good bridge because alongside what you're hearing now, because you're going to hear this at the top, we are going to play an episode that we recorded, about almost a month ago, in which we went through our own personal awards called the Cinphomaniac Awards. Dana was just alluding to that. We judged it based on the movies we had seen at the time. Now, I actually, except with one exception, which I'll also talk about in a moment if I have the time, I haven't really seen any other movies that were relevant to this award show since. So I still haven't, even including to this very moment of this recording, I still haven't seen Coda. I still haven't seen...
I haven't seen Belfast still.
Still haven't seen Belfast, and that's been like on my to-do list all week.
Coda I did love.
Nope. Yeah, so to that point, Dana, why don't you give me your thoughts on Coda, since you haven't talked about it yet? Talk about it. I mean, it's winning, but also what you think of the movie. I think I'm going to watch it for sure in the next few days. I almost watched it last night.
I thought it was a beautiful movie. It's a coming of age story, I think, at its heart, but it really, kind of opens a window into a world that most Americans don't identify with or don't know anything about, and that's the hearing impaired community. I think I've been exposed a little bit, and that's just because my parents are educators and, just always had a lot of books around. And my sister and I happened to think it was a fun thing to do to learn American Sign Language as kids, so we could talk crap in front of our parents without them knowing.
Oh, no kidding.
So I know some basic stuff. I don't use it as often, but I do use it in bartending now and then. When I get hearing impaired customers, I get to practice a little bit. But watching this movie was incredibly moving. There was a lot of moments that you identify with, and there's a lot of moments that you're like, I can never identify with this. I don't know what that must be like as a hearing person. I thought that Troy Kotsur gave the best speech of the night. It was so funny and moving, and it really highlighted the theater community and the community that really allowed him to be an actor and to experience the craft in his own way with his hearing impairness. It was very, very moving and lovely. I do recommend you watch it soon for sure. I think in our Cinphomaniac Awards, you guys will see who voted for what, but Coda did make an appearance on my list.
It did. Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you're doing a good job so far, Data, but yeah, no spoilers for that.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
We got to give them a reason to still listen to it. But yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's a good point. And yeah, I believe I did, at the top of that still also mention that I hadn't seen it. And it's interesting. What the most interesting thing people have been talking about it too is just like the way that this movie basically it was the right strategy, but I think it speaks to like kind of the way the Oscars maybe need to change things, not to like prevent this from happening, but just to like make it a little bit more exciting all around. Like Coda's most of its quote campaign has been like entirely concentrated like in last minute blitz style, which I think is like actually proven to be very effective because I don't know if you noticed, Data, we live in an ADD world now full of fucking people who are very recency biased.
6 months ago, I would have forgotten by now. So, well,
yeah. And like that. Well, the interesting part about that is Coda originally premiered at Sundance last year. And so usually movies from Sundance have that weakness of like, by the time you get to that, they're like the movie but in this case, because it was so small, and so they absolutely did save it to the last minute. And then just like, and they have Apple behind it, who like, now that I've actually looked into this, like Apple's like put their entire apparatus behind it. There's like, and I mean, across the products, there's Apple Music stuff, which given the subject matter is interesting. There's all sorts of things. Like I was looking at it, like the way all the Apple TV shit is just all organized around it. So that's stuff that like millions and millions of people are seeing just by sheer fact they're using their devices. So I almost watched Coda last night because I thought maybe it'd be relevant, but I was just like, I don't want to force these things. I've already kind of just owned the fact that I'm not a Coda guy yet, but I'm totally open to seeing it. I liked what you said. I like what people have been saying about it. I will have fun watching it, but this is interesting. I can't believe I'm saying this. I haven't even finished the movie and I don't care. I only watched like the first half of it between like late last night and like earlier this morning, actually. So I've watched it almost like in small increments. But I finally, for some reason, had this incredible urge to watch, of all things, Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. And I actually totally like it. And I mean, that's not really surprising because like when I think West Side Story, I don't think of anything I dislike. But as people who've listened to the show know, I have like this sort of weird thing where I feel like I'm constantly shitting on Spielberg, even though in my head I don't want to. Like I try to have the respect for him I think he deserves, but I just end up always having the take of like, yeah, that movie's overrated or that movie I don't even like. But I don't know, man. I think it's weird because this is probably going to be the only musical he makes or the last one he makes, but like I think he's good at it. I think what he's doing with it is that's actually what I was most curious about when watching it. Part of why I was compelled to do so. And I was always curious about it, but I was almost like curious in a negative sense before. And I think I think maybe what it was knowing it didn't really win anything, knowing it was probably about to be lost to history or as a weird footnote, just all of a sudden made me feel like, I don't think that's fair. Let me check it out. So I just wanted to do it for myself before I sort of forgot about it. Right. And, I don't know. I was like, I guess that curiosity that I'm referring to was just this idea of like, how do you make a movie that feels modern and simultaneously very rooted in where it's coming from? And I could tell that he wanted to do that. Yeah. And not only the original, but like the period, it's actually multiple things even within that thing. Because it's like the period itself. It's kind of like, it's an interesting, I mean, I could talk about it in depth, but like, which I don't feel like I can at this second, and I should watch the whole thing before I really get into it. But no, there's an interesting conversation. Did you see it?
No, I have not.
Oh, it's interesting. I mean, I'll know for you because I like I don't remember if I said this on an earlier episode at any point, but like honestly, one of the things that was turning me off to the idea of watching it was just like, you know, as someone with a Puerto Rican family, I just kind of felt like I don't know if like they're gonna do that in a way that's gonna make me feel very weird, and no, I actually think its authenticity is actually authentic to the extent it can be, again, given this weird sort of world it has to exist in of hyper reality, where it's like, you know what I mean?
I had no idea that you were part Puerto Rican.
Haven't I talked about this before? I'm pretty sure
you have. I don't know. I didn't remember that.
Well, it's not. Yeah, it's not something I talk about too much.
I've heard that Ariana DeBose really. I mean, I've seen clips of her accent. I think she's doing like maybe an impression of Rita Moreno, but in a good way. I think she does a good job of it. She's honoring her choices in the original performance, and she's, I think, trying to honor the Puerto Rican people and try to do a good job with the accent. And because Rita did such a good job, because that is her accent, it kind of sounded like she was just doing a good job of doing Rita Moreno.
What do you think about what? Yeah, I mean, that's actually a good point. It did have.
I would have done the same thing.
I mean, I almost feel like weird now because I was like, oh, it didn't win anything, but actually, no, it had one very significant win in like the major category. So, what do you think of that?
I thought that her speech was excellent and heartwarming, and talked about where she came from and the diversity, and the fact that she called herself a queer woman of color to win is a big deal, is a really big deal. And then she obviously gave Rita Moreno the credit that she deserved. She said that her Anita paved the way for other Anitas like her. Very touching.
Yeah.
As for, seeing it, being as I haven't seen the film, but I did read for the part, I have mixed of like, I'm glad that she did it justice.
I don't know
and did
if
a
you
really
mentioned that before. Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned that before. You probably did, but like, yeah. Okay. So yeah, no, you had your reasons for not wanting to watch it. My reason is just to elaborate a little. Yeah.
It maybe just like a touch of bitterness, but mostly just like, I was like, I'll get to it. I have all these other things that I don't know any of the story about. I've seen West Side Story before. I've literally read the script. So I'm like, that's the thing. I'll get to it. I'll get to it when I get to it, because Coda is something I've never seen before. And all these other films that we had talked about are stuff I hadn't seen. So that's kind of what draws me a little bit more, with a sense of urgency, because I already knew the story.
I guess choosing between the two and what I was going to watch the last night, it was like a little bit of the opposite, but also that exactly what you said. It was like, to some extent, I was like, yeah, I don't know. I actually want something familiar, but but not really. Like this, what West Side Story is doing, like, because as someone who just doesn't watch a lot of there's not a lot of movie musicals, period, especially not in that way. It was to me very curious to see like how Spielberg is going to do it.
Maybe is La La Land their last big musical to like do really well?
Pretty much, but I mean, arguably West Side Story didn't do very well. I mean, it was kind of a disappointment at the box office. That's what I mean. Like
at the box office, sure, yeah. But to win,
but now it's on Disney Plus. That, you know what I'm saying? I feel like it's probably going to have a good audience there. That's how I was watching it last night. But yeah, no, I think for me, just to ask about the Puerto Rican thing, it's actually more than that. It's like the whole notion of West Side Story always makes me feel a little weird, just because as someone with the white dad, it always just makes me think like it's like feels like some weird thing where I'm like watching my parents meet. Like, you know what I mean? It's very very awkward. It's very awkward. So that's why I kind of am always a little like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to deal with that. I need to be able to like decompartmentalize from that. But yeah, so apologies to Steven Spielberg. If the movie keeps going the way it's been going, I guess I didn't finish it yet, but I know what happens in the story. It's not about the story. It's just straight up.
We know where this is going.
I want to know how he does the camera moves. I want to know how he does the directing, which is what I've been paying attention to. And I have to say, like, I'm not surprised, because Spielberg, obviously, for the record, for everyone who's set in with all my Spielberg hating jokes, I do think Spielberg is an incredible filmmaker. That
Yes.
said, I have my issues. We've talked about them. We'll talk about them more. But I actually was really enjoying the choices he was making. I thought I don't think they're all perfect, but I was like, okay, I fuck with this. And so, yeah, apologies to Spielberg and Spielbergism. I was also loved Denis Villeneuve's speech at, I think it was the DGA, where he talked about growing up. And he's like, in Montreal, he's like, everyone wants to be a hockey player. And they all have like Gretzky on their jersey. And I had Spielberg. Great story. Great. I kind of butchered and compressed it, but like definitely check out the speech I'm referring to. And like Steven Spielberg literally stood up and started doing the kiss thing, which is like, talk about a self-congratulations, but like, thank you for praising me properly. Anyway, so a few other things I want to hit before we go here is I don't know if you've got a chance to see it. My guess is not, but I watched the first episode of Moon Knight on Disney Plus last night.
Oh,
yeah.
I've not seen it.
Yeah, so no spoilers, but this has got to be easily for a Marvel show, but I just think in TV in general that I've seen, this got to be one of the best first episodes I've seen in a long time. Like as like a pilot as a first episode, like
really.
Yeah,
cool.
Like not that like anything in particular was so like, oh my god, what an amazing scene, what an amazing. It's just like the feeling and the pacing and like just the sense of like excitement and mystery. I was like, I'm into this. Like I want to know what happens next on like every level. Like
Ooh,
so like
okay,
yeah, no, I'm all in. It was just like kind of surreal and cool. Just be like, holy shit, it's Oscar Isaac in an MCU project, but it doesn't even, in some ways, at least so far, feel like an MCU project. And I don't mean that as like a bad thing. I mean that as a good thing. Like it feels like its own world and its own stuff. And I'm curious to see if and when crossovers start coming in. I'm sure they will. But they've
It's
I love, yeah.
Why
but
would they
I
not?
actually really love that there's zero of that in the first episode. Like you're just like you wouldn't need, like for once you wouldn't literally, and this is literally the first time for a Disney Plus show, because this is actually why it stands out immediately too. All the Disney Plus products so far for Marvel have been literally extensions of like side characters and characters in events already happened in the movies previously. This you could actually watch having never seen any of it. And you would not, I mean, you would be confused because the show is confusing. And so it's got like, that's the thing I like about it. It's got that kind of like, weirdly, when I think of great pilots and I think of this, like I actually was thinking of Lost. It was like, oh, I want to know what this is. I want to know what this is. What's that? Like, what's really, you know what I mean? Like there's actual mystery and suspense where I have some ideas.
You can't wait to watch it next week. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think anything is going to be too surprising, because I feel like the other weird flip side of what I'm saying is I feel like by the end of the pilot, like a lot of things are like not clear, like as in like, oh, you know the whole story, but like you get the basics. And I kind of like knew some of these things going in just because I have no real comic familiarity with Moon Knight, but like I know like the very basics of the premise. And
I think he's one of the less familiar characters, and I think that might be why they might not introduce the crossovers early on, because we all kind of need a refresher on Moon Knight, myself included.
No, I agree.
I remember his story, and I don't know if anybody else is kind of in the same boat, but I assume, I don't need a refresher on Catwoman, Batman, even Morbius. I don't think I need a refresher. Like, that's fine. But I don't really feel like I know too much about him yet. And I need to know.
No, I think
before we start doing crossovers.
Moon Knight definitely has like a dedicated fan base, but like
he does, but he's not as mainstream as a lot of the other
No,
heroes.
it's not even just that he's not as mainstream.
So they need to introduce stuff.
What I would say is like honestly, I've seen a lot of this. There's a lot of quote Moon Knight fans that are fans of Moon Knight because he's in like Marvel vs. Capcom 3, or like because they've seen him on posters and stuff. Very few people, I feel like, other than again a very specific group of like hardcore comics people that I can tell actually know anything about the character, and like in terms of like story or like what his books are actually like. It's a very insider thing, and I think what's cool about this, I think you're exactly right. I think that's why they want to really focus on just him and not worry about the rest of it, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there to like really flesh out this character in this world, and they don't want to waste it by just shoehorning in other stuff, which I think is a good discipline. I think they're taking an approach that's actually a lot more similar to the way they do MCU new character movies. Like they're much more like, hey, this is the character, we got to bring you in his world. And that's what I think a lot of people have pointed out. There's some questionable like CG. I thought it was like intentionally stylized, but a lot of other people are just reading it as bad, which I think it skirts that line. But other than that, I think that the show, other than that question, that asterisk, I think the show is like the most an MCU show has felt like the movies. Like even compared to like Loki or Falcon Winter Soldier, where there were like, again, certain set pieces and effects stuff that felt really movie. Yeah, those things look great. But to me, it's not so much about that as what I'm realizing. It's about like the sense of like pacing and focus. Like this first episode, just focused on Oscar Isaac's character, and like you're just getting in there and you're like meeting him and you're learning about him, but you're learning that he doesn't know much about himself, and it's like this weird thing like that. And whereas these other MCU Disney Plus shows, there's so much about table setting. Remember Endgame. Remember this. We have to make sure you remember that this character's going through stuff right now. And then also this other stuff happened on screen we have to catch you up on. And also this, and also this. And it's like, it becomes very belaboring. I mean, one of the reasons Loki was the best of these shows so far is because I think that despite it having some of that baggage, it also really took its like cards, was like, here's the TVA. Here's a whole new crazy set of things for you to actually get invested in, instead of just like, whereas the first episodes of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I think is like one of the worst TV episodes I've ever seen. Like, especially in hindsight, it was one of the worst, most boring things I've ever seen. If I wasn't so jazzed about Marvel, there's no way I ever would have watched another episode. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like one of those things where it's like, yeah, this is boring as fuck. Obviously, I think the show, especially in its like certain episodes, was really good. I think the ending was a little, yeah, we don't need to revisit that. But in any case, I'm going to be watching more Moon Knight. I'm sure you'll catch up with it. Two other things I want to talk about real quick. And I can keep it on the Disney Plus train, because that's the thing. I was just having a Disney Plus night last night for some reason, which I don't normally have. Watch this.
I love that for you.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm such a Disney guy. I didn't watch this, and I don't know when I will, but I've been hearing a lot about it over the last like 2-3 weeks since I think it came out. And it's like definitely got me curious in a way that I haven't been for this type of movie. And ages since the last time like Pixar had a really good movie in theater.
I'm gonna say, I'm so
Turning
curious.
Red. Turning Red. Have you watched Turning Red?
I have not. I heard it's about periods.
Yeah, it is, but it's about other things too. I've that's the thing. I haven't seen the movie, but I've like, because this is how it came out. So I follow a lot of like YouTube shit, and like when this movie came out, like a lot of people were like talking about it because they were like, there's like this whole like right wing or like ultra conservative Christian kind of media thing coming after this movie because they think this movie is like basically inspiring little girls to be promiscuous and blah blah blah, all the usual shit, and like there's witchcraft, all you name the thing, you know the type of vibe I'm talking about.
Sure. The the Harry Potter books crowd. Oh yeah. And the funny thing about it is like, I mean, watching these engagements and people kind of countering them, and the more I'm hearing about like what's in the movie, I was like, and I think this is what be a lot of the commentaries I'm referring to this point too, is like, actually this movie is very like provocative in a sense, but that's actually what's good about it, because it's like, hey, like let's actually take a like, this movie actually is seemingly standing for something that I think is very powerful and interesting, and I'm shocked that it's in a Pixar movie on Disney Plus, but that's actually a pretty cool that it is. Like, wow, I can't believe they have a movie that's like pro like children's rights, if that makes sense, like pro like it does
teenage sexuality, like pro like explicitly, pretty much like straight up like this is what I guess a spoiler, but it was one of the things spoiled for me, but like the villain of the movie is the mom, like straight up like the mom, not like an evil stepmother, like just a straight up normal mom who's like voiced by Sandra Oh and is seemingly a nice lady, but it's like, no, mom, you're actually are an asshole. And the movie doesn't like shy away from that, apparently. Again, I still haven't seen it.
Not gonna like that.
Right. So that's what triggered all the it wasn't even just all the peers. It was like straight up like this movie's telling kids to disobey their parents. It's making a virtue of disobeying your parents. Yeah, of course. So, you know, I find that triggering and stuff inherently funny, but like, it was more like, okay, I don't care that it's triggering because people get triggered over very stupid shit, like stupid shit in Disney movies all the time. I could care less about those Disney movies. But in this case, they're getting triggered over stuff that I actually was like, it actually is pretty provocative in a way that excites me and interests me. So I actually really want to watch this movie. I don't know when I will, but I will. It's on Disney Plus, so I can watch it anytime. But I'm actually.
Well, you also need to make time, Marcus, to watch anything, everywhere, all at once. Everything.
Well, thank you for that segue, because that's what I was going to ask you to tell me about. Again, no spoilers, but you said you saw it, so I haven't seen it yet. I'm probably going to see it at some point this weekend.
No spoilers, but it might be the best movie ever made. It is, and I'm just going to throw out some words here. No spoilers. It is a rom-com Matrix.
Yeah,
the Matrix was a romantic comedy. That's what you get here, and I think
Lana Wachowski would say that's what we did for Matrix Resurrections.
yeah, but
these
people are trying to be funny. Yeah, no, I think.
Have you seen Swiss Army Man?
Definitely Swiss Army Man.
That's the
I'm trying to remember what that's about. Is that the one where there's a dead body?
It's Paul Dano and Daniel Radcliffe.
Guy?
Yes. Very interesting movie.
I have seen
from a few years ago. Yeah, and that was a movie that I remember had a lot of hype.
I thought it was very weird.
And it
reminded me of The Lobster.
It came out the same year as that movie, but I don't know. I found the
it probably did, but like weird and funny and.
Look, no. So I haven't seen the Everything Everywhere, but like I think the thing that's interesting about that to me is like Swiss Army Man was a movie that had a lot of hype and interest to it as like, oh wow, it's like cool A24 trailer. Like I want to see it, and I thought it was a good movie, but it was one of those movies where I was like, oh, these directors are very inventive, they're very like whatever, but because it's two guys, both named Daniel, I don't know. It's just like in terms of like the story and ultimate message, it felt very muddled and confused and not like all that interesting, I think, or like it kind of like stumbled a little bit. And I haven't rewatched it since it came out, but that was like kind of my takeaway. And I think that was kind of the general consensus. Whereas this movie, I know you just said it might be the best movie ever made, but honestly, Dana, I don't think you're quite like alone in having at least some semblance of that feeling, because like the reaction to it I've seen has been like not only positive but kind of just like, yo, this movie is like really special, really crazy, like I can't even believe it. And so that makes me really curious about it, because to go from Swiss Army Man, again, a movie that had a lot of potential but didn't maybe quite live up to it, to a movie where people are like, yo, this movie like is like reaching heights I didn't know movies could reach type talk, hyperbolic or not, is really interesting. So yeah, I want to see it, and then presumably have a podcast episode about it. There's so many
layers. There's so many layers of it, and it really does kind of force you to explore facets of human emotions and what they mean. Yeah, and look at different perspectives. And visually, it was stunning, and the story I could relate. I literally cried 3 times, but I also laughed out loud, made a noise in the theater.
Can I tell you another reason why I was going to see it no matter what. I've just been busy this like last weekend and all that stuff. But one reason for sure, I'm definitely going to see it and want us to cover it. And not even just because it sounds like the type of movie that is tailor-made for the way, you and I discuss movies, like kind of the way this podcast is. You got to go real deep into it. You got to like look through every crevice and like decode it all. That's the forte, right? But a real reason I'm looking forward to it is just for once, and like for the first time probably this year, here's a movie that I already know you like, and so I don't have to worry about the fact that you're gonna come in and be like, I didn't really like it actually. This has happened basically for every movie we've done this year.
And it is one of those movies. Like honestly, there's so many movies that I've seen that I liked that I probably won't watch again, or I might watch 1 or 2 more times. This is a film I think I could easily watch it 10 more times. Easily.
Wow. You don't normally say that.
I don't ever say that. Say that. about a movie.
Huh.
I could watch this movie 10 more times. I might watch it again this week if I have time to get back to the
All right,
theater.
damn, girl.
It is something
I don't
that you
know.
want to watch in the theater the first time. I will say you need to go sit there. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, talk about a recommendation and a half. I mean, yeah. So I think I mean, at this point, I'm always hesitant to give plans on air because everyone who's been listening to this knows that they always don't go the way I say. But nevertheless, I'm quite sure I'm going to see this movie sometime in the next week. In which case,
we'll talk about it at some point.
Yeah, we'll talk about it at some point. But I definitely
it'll be on
like
our list.
It's on our list. We'll cover it. I mean, I just get the impression that no matter what I think about it, it'll be worth getting into as much as possible. It seems like that, right? Kind of thing. Okay. Well, we've hit all the things I wanted to talk about for today. But if you are listening, what's going to follow this now is that awards episode that we mentioned. So you're going to find out what we thought about all the movies last year, except for the ones we didn't see. So take care to check that out. And you can see who got it more right, us or the Oscars. Already know what my opinion is on that. So there you go. Any other closing thoughts, Dana, before we hop off here?
I can't think of any. Have a great week, movie lovers.
First things first, everybody. We're doing this a particular way. This may become the new official Cinphomaniac standard for how we do this. Maybe it doesn't work as well as I think, and it will call for revision. That's still to be determined. This is the first annual. It will be annual by definition. First annual Cinphomaniac Awards. All right. For 2021.
We need a theme song.
Yeah, we do. I'm going to, don't worry. I'll cook something up. There should absolutely be that. I'll edit it in and it'll be great. So,
oh my gosh,
yes.
So excited.
Yes, I'm very excited for it as well. So here's how it's going to work. Here's the basic ground rules. We're going to do this in 3 phases, which sounds like a lot, but when you know the 3 phases, it all makes sense. And like, oh yeah, that's the way to do it. Okay. So the first phase is giving out the nominees, because unlike these other like award shows that you're familiar with, we're not doing that like 2 months before. Basically, it's all happening in one go, right? So the way we've got it down is for each category, we're each going to nominate up to 5 nominations. Now, doesn't have to be a total of 5. Like if for a certain category, and even for me, for some categories, I have less than 5. Like most of them I have 5, but less than 5 for each unique nomination. As in, like if I say film A, Dana says film B, I say film C. They're all going to add up. So the most you can have in any category is 10. Because if I have 5 unique ones, Dana has 5 unique ones, there's 10 total. However, and this, I assume this is bound to happen, but maybe it won't. We would have overlapping picks. Like I picked film A, Dana also picked film A, right? Now that still counts for 1 pick. So that film A is on the list, but I don't get an extra pick. Dana doesn't get an extra pick. So in this case, if there was 1 overlap, but 4 the same or 4 different ones, then there would be 9 films total, right? See what I'm saying? So that's how that works. And once each category has had its nominees given, that's when we move to phase 2. So we're going to go through each category. Then once they're all out there, phase 2 is the fun part. Phase 2 is what I call deliberation. So for each category, we discuss the standing nominee pool. And there's a reason for this, because ideally, without giving away what are if let's say we're already each leaning towards one movie, we don't want to necessarily give that away. But what we do want to do is discuss them a little bit, because the main purpose of this phase is for us to each decide how we're going to exercise our 3 vetoes. Okay. So what I mean is Dana and I each have 3 vetoes total. So in phase 2, I can be like, let's say Dana puts an actor that I just hate basically in there, or a pick that I find egregious, right? I can choose to veto that pick and then basically replace it with one of my own and a new pick. Because in some categories, you have to limit it to 5. If Dana, I guess in the best case scenario, this sounds horrible, but you'll get the point. There's 2 me's and I get 5 and then he gets my other 5 and then we have the perfect 10 each time. But since we don't live in that world, right? I'm going to be like, man, there's 4 slots being used up on things I don't like. So I'm going to veto one of them. Now, because we don't want the vetoes to go overboard, there are limits to it, right? We each have 3 vetoes, meaning we can each veto a total of 3 nominations in any category and replace it with another nominee. The veto nominee is no longer eligible to be vetoed on as a final winning pick. So again, once you're vetoed, you're out. You can't be picked for that. I can't veto. Dana can't veto one of my picks for actor. And then when we move on to the phase of picking winners, I can't just pick the one she vetoed. They're no longer eligible to be picked as the winners. That's the key point there. However, there can be no more than 1 veto per category. So per person. So if we're in the acting category, I can't use all 3 of my vetoes to veto 3 of Dana's picks. I can only do that once per category. She can do it once per category. However, we can both, let's say we get to best leading actor. She can use one of her vetoes there and I can use one of my vetoes there. It's we're crisscrossing basically. However, I guess I didn't even think of this as a possibility. If I veto, this is kind of a granular rule, but just to clarify, if I veto one actor, I'm trying not to use literal examples because I feel like I might accidentally give away a pick if I do that. If I veto one actor, then Dana vetoes one actor. I can't then use my veto replacement with the actor that already got vetoed. Once you're vetoed, you're ineligible in that category, no matter what. Okay, that just to make that very clear. And yeah, there's no obligation to use any or all of your vetoes, meaning I can just decide not to use any of my 3 vetoes. I can be like, all of Dana's picks are good. I don't want to veto any of them. Let's just move on. Vice versa, also true. I guess I didn't say this, but you can also veto something and not replace it with anything if you want. You just be like, I'm just pruning a cat 1 out of it period, which, I don't recommend people do that, but because it's less fun, but whatever. I guess I'm giving you that right. So you can be less fun if you want. Once each category has been deliberated on and the opportunity to veto for each one has been passed or used, that nominee list is then finalized as official and we move on to phase 3. Phase 3, this is weird on a podcast, but phase 3, we're each going to just write down our winners, right? So no talking when that's happening. We each write down our winners from the list once it's been pruned in with the vetoes and all that, as it stands at the end of phase 2, basically. And we each pick one winner for each, right? So meaning it's possible we'll pick the same winner, in which case that's the best outcome. If Dana and I both pick movie A for best picture, movie A is now the official Cinphomaniac best picture. It's got the double stamp. It's the granddaddy. However, let's say Dana picked movie A and I picked movie B. Movie B still gets my stamp. Movie A still gets Dana's stamp, and we just leave it at that. You see what I'm saying? It's not like there's a tiebreaker or there's only 2 of us. So it's just fuck it. We can each have our own separate best picture winner if we want. But maybe we'll have the same one. It just, depends, right? So that's basically how it's going to work. In terms of leading and supporting actor, right? This is something the Oscars have to do all the time, but they don't do this. I wish they did this. The way I have it set up, just so that we're not doing the thing where, I picked one actor for leading, Dana picks the same actor and the same performance for supporting because she's that's a supporting role, not a leading role. We're not going to have that argument. What we're going to do is Dana's entitled to pick that. I'm entitled to pick it. But if that actor gets nominated by one of us in leading, they're automatically moved into leading. That's just oh, no, sorry. It's the exact opposite. They're automatically supporting. Removed from leading and just rendered to supporting, right? So that's like a extra veto basically that doesn't count towards our 3. But that's just how that works. Anyway, also the 5 nominees, I mean, this should already be the case by the time you're hearing it, are our 5 nominee picks. Like, meaning like if I say mine first, and I guess I don't know who's going to say what first. We have to decide that last. Dana can't just go, oh shit, he picked 3 of the same movies as me, so I'm just going to change my whole list now. I mean, honor code, I can't see what Dana's doing right now, but I'm assuming she's not going to cheat. That's called cheating. Okay. So that's just to be very clear about that.
The same. I doubt we would pick the same for everything.
No, I think one of the reasons
considering the pool, we should also be very clear. The pool here is any movie that Marcus and I have seen in 2021. It's not just the official Oscars nomination list that we're choosing from. That's
right.
Why I don't think it's likely that we're going to have the exact same 5 movies, because we're not picking out of the list that's been official. It's anything we've seen that we liked.
Exactly. No, very good point. And I'm giving all these rules, like basically realizing or intending or expecting exactly what you just said. I kind of expect us to have different picks for the most part. That's a good thing. Mm-hmm. That's what I want. But the rules are just to make it so in the cases where, you know, we know what we're doing, we don't have to deliberate on what to do. Right. It's already been preordained and everyone knows the rules. So they know it's fair. And again, no cheating. Right. So, the last thing, it's, you know, like I already said this, like you can just, you know, I don't know what Dana's picks are. I don't know how many she has in any one category. I know what I have, but like, you don't have to have 5 total. You can even be like, I'm just abstaining from this category. I nominate 0. That's totally fine too. So that's the rules. We got it down. Now, here are the 12 categories. Okay. These are the 12 categories. And we're going to go in the order I'm about to say. We're not going to give them right now. I'm just going to list all 12 and then we'll do it. So we have best supporting female performance, best supporting male performance. I like that better than actor, actress, which is a little dated, you know. Best visual effects, best sound design and or mixing, best score or soundtrack, as you can see, I also kind of combined some categories in the Oscars, which, you know, if you're giving the awards to the craftsman, it makes sense to do it that way. But like, I'm just kind of like, let's just simplify it down. Best score, soundtrack, best editing, best cinematography, best screenplay, best leading female performance, best leading male performance, best director, and then the granddaddy, best picture. So those are the categories. The last thing I'm going to do, last thing. And Dana, you're feel free to do this too if you want, but you don't have to. Maybe it'll be almost spoilerly. Actually, you know what? I just changed my mind. It would be spoilerly for even me to do this, so I'm not going to do it. What I was going to do was I was going to name a bunch of movies that I haven't seen still that might have had an impact, but I'll do that last. I'll do that like before we do best picture, but like everything else we should just go through. Like let's not, you know. So Dana, are you ready for phase 1? Are you ready to begin?
Yes.
Oh, that was a hard
Let
yes.
us
I like
commence.
Let us commence. That's the word. Okay. Category 1, best supporting female performance. Now, who should go first? I'm going to let you decide. You can go first or I'll go first. I don't care. And we'll just go back and forth after that.
For best supporting female performance, I nominate Regina King for The Harder They Fall. She plays Trudy Smith. I also would like to nominate Jodie Comer. She plays Millie in Free Guy. Also, Nina Arianda plays Vivian Vance in Being the Ricardos. Marlee Matlin plays Jackie in Coda. Nominate her as well. And lastly, Frances McDermott as Lady Macbeth.
Here is my list for best supporting female. Okay. I have Jessie Buckley for The Lost Daughter. You were saying all the character names. I don't even think I can name some of these characters, but I like that you did that, but I'm not going to be able to do it. Sorry. So Jessie Buckley for The Lost Daughter, Kirsten Dunst for The Power of the Dog, Gabby Hoffman for Come On, Come On, Kate Blanchett for Don't Look Up, and then Harriet Sampson Harris for Licorice Pizza. Now, I think we have a 10 totally unique entries there, which is great.
Yep.
I'm loving that. Okay. So best supporting male performance, we have, for me, Jesse Plemons for The Power of the Dog, Mark Rylance for Don't Look Up, Bradley Cooper for Licorice Pizza, Masaki Okada for Drive My Car, and then Andrew Garfield for Spider-Man No Way Home.
I chose Idris Elba, The Harder They Fall. He plays Rufus Buck. I also chose Eugenio Derbez from Coda. He plays Bernardo Villalobos, the music teacher. I also nominate Forrest Whitaker, playing C.L. Franklin in Respect. And my last nomination is Ty Sheridan for The Tender Bar. He plays JR.
Next category is best visual effects. And since I went first on the last one, you're going to go first on this one.
Dana nominates Free Guy, Eternals, Reminiscence, Spider-Man No Way Home, and Macbeth.
I only nominated 3 for this. I have The Green Knight, Spider-Man No Way Home, so that's an overlap, so that's already in there. And then Dune. We have 7 total picks there. Next category is best sound design and or mixing. I have Dune, Evangelion 3+1. That's a simplified title, but you're going to hear this movie a few times. I'll spoil it, just say. Then I have Drive My Car, which is another movie from Japan, but live action. The Green Knight, and Spider-Man No Way Home. So I have 5 there. What are yours, Dan?
For sound design, I picked Tick Tick Boom, Respect, Macbeth, Free Guy, and The Harder They Fall. No overlaps.
No overlaps. That's great. We're gonna have a lot to choose from for winners. That's for sure.
I know.
Well, there's vetoes to give out too, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm not gonna spoil that. Next category, complimentary, is best score and or soundtrack. My nominees are Evangelion 3+1. Then I have The Power of the Dog. Then I have Dune. Then I have Tick Tick Boom. Then I have Licorice Pizza. So those are my 5.
I picked Dune, Tick Tick Boom, Coda, Free Guy, and Encanto. The next category we have is for best editing. For me, I chose The Lost Daughter, Tick Tick Boom, Spider-Man No Way Home, and The Harder They Fall.
Okay, so for my best editing, I have 5. I have Come On, Come On, Last Night in Soho, Zola, Red Rocket, and Licorice Pizza. So a lot of different movies that haven't been mentioned yet got into that list. Best cinematography. I have The Green Knight, Spencer, Licorice Pizza, Dune, and The French Dispatch.
I chose The Lost Daughter, Dune, Spider-Man, The Harder They Fall, and Way of the Dog. Dune we both have. Next category, best screenplay. Dune, The Tender Bar, Spider-Man No Way Home, Coda, and The Harder They Fall.
So my screenplay nominations are The Card Counter by Paul Schrader, Licorice Pizza by Paul Thomas Anderson, Come On, Come On by Mike Mills, Drive My Car by Ryusuke Hamaguchi. I think he has a co-writer, but apologies to them. And then The Power of the Dog, Jane Campion. I think she also has a co-writer. Apologies to them. Time for best leading female performance. Here are my picks. Oh man, I'm starting right where it hurts you, Dana. I have a lot of hype for Licorice Pizza. Olivia Colman for The Lost Daughter. Tokomura for Drive My Car. And then I have Kristen Stewart for Spencer and Jennifer Lawrence for Don't Look Up. So those are my 5.
Okay. Interesting. I smell a veto.
Oh, I know. By the way, can I just say real quick? When I came up with the veto, one of the first things I realized is the only veto that I don't want is the only one I know you're going to want. And I did it because in the sake of fairness, I want to make you bear the shame of daring to do that. So
I'm going to have
we'll get there when we get there. I'm going to, all right.
Stand.
Well, this is what deliberation is about. I'm going to throw a conniption and potentially punish you.
Here are my nominations for Best Leading Female Performance. Think about, performance. Olivia Colman, Lost Daughter. Penelope Cruz, Parallel Mothers. Jennifer Hudson, playing Aretha Franklin in Respect. Nicole Kidman, in Becoming Ricardos, playing Lucy. I Love Lucy. Emma Stone as Cruella in Cruella. We've got 9. So the next Best Leading Male category, I have chosen Denzel Washington in Macbeth, Andrew Garfield in Tick, Tick, Boom, Ben Affleck in The Tender Bar, and Jonathan Majors in The Harder They Fall, playing Nat Love.
I have Oscar Isaac for The Card Counter, Benedict Cumberbatch for The Power of the Dog, Hidetoshi Nishijima for Drive My Car, Simon Rex for Red Rocket, and my last is Andrew Garfield for Tick, Tick, Boom. So since you have that too, that's a given. Best Director. Denis Villeneuve for Dune. Ryusuke Hamaguchi for Drive My Car. Hideaki Anno for Evangelion. Paul Thomas Anderson for Licorice Pizza. And Mike Mills for Come On, Come On.
My picks for Best Director. I picked Denis Villeneuve for Dune. George Clooney for The Tender Bar. James Samuel for The Harder They Fall. Joel Cohen for Macbeth. And John Watts for Spider-Man. So we have 9.
Best Picture.
So I chose for Best Picture Dune, Coda, Encanto, Spider-Man, and The Harder They Fall.
So you got 5. Here are my 5. It's an easy 5 because it's the same movies I just said for Best Director. Dune, Drive My Car, Come On, Come On, Evangelion, Licorice Pizza. Yeah, which is what I was going to say. I thought I was going to make an effort to try to not just mirror my Best Director, Best Picture list, but it was just one of those cases where I just couldn't find a genuine way to justify it. So I'm glad that yours is different, and I'm glad that all the movies included are included. Honestly, I think we both did a great job.
We've got a lot to go down to.
We got a lot to work with, so that's actually a great. That's actually a great place to start because I would say like in general, like this worked out very well because we were in our deliberation phase now. So we're going to issue vetoes if necessary. Okay. So here's how, again, every deliberation on every category, there's no real set format for this. That's kind of the point is we're just like discuss it. Do we like these 10? Do we feel like we want to remove one or I want to remove one, you want to remove one, and who are we replacing with? And the way the vetoes works is if I veto one of yours, I get to pick what the replacement is with your consent. So you just have to sit there and take it. But given the list, I'm very fine with it. I guess.
I think I'm fine with our list too.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Maybe now this is the time I'll interject to say what I was going to say maybe before we read the list. So there's a couple movies that I wanted to see. I missed. I'm glad to see a lot of them are represented in your list, which is what I mean about I think this went well. I'm actually not that it replaces me actually having to watch them and decide for myself, but like it's actually good that these movies are getting represented on these lists because I didn't get a chance to see them, therefore I couldn't nominate. So here's my list.
I didn't get a chance to see Come On, and you put them in a lot of things, so that's good.
Yeah, Come On actually played in theaters and then left theaters, and now a lot of people haven't seen it, which is unfortunate because I think it's actually like, oh, well, I don't want to spoil things. Okay, I won't say the rest of that sentence. But so one movie that I really want to see that's not included anywhere in our nominations, but I'm very excited about it, seeing it. I was even thinking about watching last night, but the Horizon game sucked me in, was Hand of God. That's the Paolo Sorrentino film. It's an Italian language movie. I'm a huge fan of Paolo Sorrentino's stuff. And I have it on good authority from people that I trust that Hand of God's an amazing film. So I can only imagine I would have fought to include it somewhere, if not a lot of places, had I seen it. But nevertheless, I'm very happy with my list as is. So that's where we're at. Another film, French language film that I have not seen that got a lot of reviews, and it's also a lot of notoriety because it's very intense, is this movie. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Titane. Titane. Another film I haven't seen that clearly you saw, so it's included, is Parallel Mothers. Didn't see that. Another film that I was maybe thinking I'd watch last night that I know got a lot of Oscar attention. I have a lot of reservations about watching this movie. And the movie I'm talking about is Belfast, the Kenneth Branagh film. I guess I don't want to get into it unless I have to because of my actual reaction to the movie. But like things involving the troubles and the politics of Ireland definitely like always make me go, how am I going to really feel about this? Because I definitely have a lot of opinions about that, is what I'll say. Anyway, then Tragedy of Macbeth, never got around to watching it, so I'm glad you got to include it. Coda, same thing. One film that I don't recall you mentioning unless I'm just blanking is this I think it's a Danish film called The Worst Person in the World. It's become very popular.
I've heard of it, but it's become very popular and I just have not seen it yet.
Yeah, my sister watched it and liked it. And Being Ricardo's I also have not seen. Kind of one of those ones where, again, I could be wrong. I'm going to seek it out and watch it eventually. But it's one of those ones where I feel like I don't think I'm going to like it that much. So I'm not that worried that I didn't see it, but I could be wrong. You know, I don't know. Lucille Ball biopic movie is not really my cup of tea per se. It's actually very funny to look back on her. She's also technically in Licorice Pizza, and the portrayal of her there is not very friendly. But granted, it's like the perspective of her, like yelling at a bunch of kid actors who she thinks are like ruining her life, and she's kind of over the hill at that point. It's not like her in her prime as like a star and all that. You know, different strokes. Okay, so yeah, that's my list of films. So if I mention that film, that's why it's not included on my list. It's not that I hate it; I just haven't seen it. And there's obviously other movies I haven't seen too. But I think, you know, for the most part, I managed over the last couple of weeks to see most of the things I needed to still see. Yeah, that Ty Sheridan pick is interesting because in a less crowded field, I might have tried to include him for The Card Counter, which he was in.
Oh, he was in that.
Yes, a lot of people don't realize that he's Oscar Isaac plays like his like sort of older male friend, basically. Yes. I don't want to explain the story, but it's cool. It's a cool story. It's like one of those things where, hey, I'm taking you under my wing, kid, type of things. But it doesn't go well, like you might imagine. The Green Knight, it's in terms of visual effects. I remember part of my pitch to you for why I should go see it. And I really hope you seek it out soon, Dana, because I think you're really gonna like it. I could be wrong. Is the visual effects. I think if anything, that's what I mean. I think like the thing you're maybe gonna like most about it are the visual effects. Because it's like a lot of very cool practical makeup work and things like that. Like you'd like it.
Okay, good. Because I was worried you would veto my Free Guy, and I was like,
no. Free Guy's visual effects actually, no. Free Guy's visual effects I thought were actually very good to that point. And like,
and nostalgic. in a
Yeah,
fun way.
just to be clear, like I kind of am forgetting though, I'm not part of the other point of deliberations is for us to just like discuss like what we liked about any of the movies in particular, like give that context. But I'll say to your point about Free Guy, I really do think Free Guy is one of the like I think the thing I like most about it, and you can go back and listen to our pod episode on it, by the way, if you want to know full in depth what I think of Free Guy, because I actually found that movie surprisingly like deep in a lot of ways. Like it actually had something to say that I don't think was obvious. And then once it gets into it, you're like, wow, this is actually like a very, very kind of good modern take on a certain type of narrative that I think we're actually lacking, especially in mainstream entertainment. So I really like Free Guy. It's just not a movie that I've really thought about much since, which is why I didn't include it really anywhere. I think though, when I look back on it, since the visual effects were pretty good, I think there were a couple things in there that could have looked really bad that didn't. I don't want to spoil the movie for those who haven't seen it, but there's a particular thing towards the end, I'm assuming you know what I'm talking about, that could have looked really weird in a bad way, but it looks really weird in a good way, I would say. Yeah. That's really all I'll say. I don't want to spoil Free Guy for those who maybe didn't watch it or didn't listen to our episode. But if you haven't, what the hell are you doing? Go watch it and listen to our damn episode. That's why you're here. Yeah. So other visual effects, I think I do, like I said, for the Green Knight is incredibly impressive, not just with the practical effects, but actually with the CG. And the thing to know about Green Knight is Green Knight was done on a significantly smaller budget than the other two movies I nominated, and a lot of the ones you did. Like maybe not Reminiscence or Macbeth, or I didn't see Macbeth, so I don't know exactly what the visual effects are in there. I don't know if you feel like you need to explain it or should, even for spoiler reasons, but it's certainly not the budget of a Spider-Man or an Eternals or a Dune. So the fact that they made Green Knight, which is like, I don't know if it's a stretch to just call it an independent film, but it is more or less an independent film, or certainly part of that. If the industry can only be independent or Hollywood studio, it's definitely in the independent category, right? So yeah, the Green Knight is a fascinating example of like, wow, if you know what you're doing and you have the experience and like you're willing to make the choices that are needed to be made and like do it the right way, you can make a visually stunning film with complicated visual effects. Like we're talking like, giants, like, you've seen Lord of the Rings. It's like that. So yeah, it's pretty impressive. Meanwhile, Amazon just spent $1 billion on their Lord of the Rings series, which again seems like the stupidest, most excessive shit ever that they only did because they're Amazon. They're like, I can afford to blow $1 billion. Oh, so sweet. We make that like a month. Not even actually. They make it like a day. Yeah. Anyway, I think like Jeff Bezos made like $200 billion like last month or something like that. No. I'm getting the math on this wrong, but either way, it's not far off. I think Spider-Man, No Way Home, and Dune, in my opinion, speak for themselves. Eternals, let me say something about Eternals. There were a lot of people who thought Eternals' visual effects were bad.
What?
Yeah, I read multiple reviews and heard multiple discussions of people that thought the deviants and all that looked like very poor CG. I disagree, by the way. I disagree, but
they're nitpicking. I thought it looked good, but I think why I specifically nominated this for visual effects was the romantic weapons that appear that the Eternals can conjure, specifically Angelina Jolie's character can conjure these intricate lace golden orifices that just come from nowhere, come from inside her somewhere. And I thought they were so beautiful and so well done. And everything else there wasn't anything that stuck out that I noticed, because if you notice it, like, then it's bad. If you're like, oh, why am I looking at that? You shouldn't be noticing it. It should help you tell the story. And I think that it really did for Eternals. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah.
The script is another thing, but visually, I thought it was great.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about, it's weird doing this category because I'm like, notable exclusion, by the way, on both our lists is no mention of the Matrix Resurrections. But I think if you go back and listen to our episode on that, you would find out why. I actually like the movie, though. Like, you'll also find that out, but it's not because the visual effects are good.
I didn't like the way it looked. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll just say, it's weird just when I got this list in general, because Dune aside, but honestly, what I think is great about Dune isn't what I would typically call traditional visual effects. It's the cinematography, it's other things, production design. Which, by the way, you might have noticed, I didn't include a production design category. Maybe was an oversight. I think I might be inclined to include it in future Cinphomaniac Awards, but I don't know. I kind of feel like production design is an interesting conversation. We can save it, but like I get the impression sometimes that people don't think of it the way they should if they're going to pick the right films. Like, and I'm not saying you wouldn't.
Sure.
I'm just saying I think the audience doesn't always even understand. And I want to make sure I have that conversation. I had a conversation with a few people in person about this recently, so I kind of know what my take on it is. But it's interesting. Anyway.
Yeah, maybe we can add even next year. Maybe we'll add costumes too. Yeah,
I thought about costumes. Costumes would be cool. And like,
but this is
funny
a lot.
Because
this is our first.
Yeah, Dune would be my front runner in both those categories. So I feel like I'm robbing Dune of some glory. But I'll just say, yeah, that's where Dune to me shines. Costumes, production design, other categories that we did include. Visual effects, I don't necessarily feel Dune is that impressive. It doesn't need to be because of these other things. Similarly, No Way Home, I included it because it's a Marvel movie that does the Marvel things and it does it well. There's nothing bad about it. And it's like, if you just want to think of what movie gave me the most visual spectacle, it's probably No Way Home in a lot of ways, other than Dune. But No Way Home is not breaking any boundaries. I think it's interesting because now I feel like we're going into I think the one sequence that I think justifies its inclusion wholesale is the sequence where he's fighting Doctor Strange in the Mirrorverse. That was really well done.
That was really cool.
Yeah, but the rest of it is kind of whatever. However, I feel like with some of the stuff that's coming out this year, but not even just in movies, some of the stuff that's already aired on TV recently, I'm particularly talking about this Book of Boba Fett, and I don't want to say any more to spoil it. I'm like, that's like, come on, like there's nothing like that in these movies. Let me just put it that way. I think Dune is, if you haven't seen Dune, or really, again, in this case, heard Dune is a feast for the fucking ears. I'll never forget being in that IMAX theater where you can really hear it and you got the Dolby Atmos and shit. Like the rain, the dust has sound in this. Just and like I will say, because I said sound design and or mixing, the music is involved in the mixing, so that's true. But it's more about, in that context, like how the entire soundscape is arranged in with regards to the music. And Dune, to me, the mixing on Dune is incredible because you have Hans Zimmer doing the score. We're going to talk about score in a moment, but it's a very particular thing. But never do you feel like the score is stripping anything away from all the immaculate work going on with the sound design across the board. And that, to me, is a sign of great mixing, right? So just like the subtleties of like those little tiny, I forget what they're called now in a minute, the little tiny like needle bugs that fly, the drone things, those sounds, just like everything, the way it's just all of it, the still suit.
It's called a hunter seeker.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that stuff is great. So I really appreciate Dune. With Evangelion, this is really important. This is why I want to include this, because this is something that if you haven't seen the movie, you don't familiar, you're just like, why is he rapping this hard? This is where I start talking about this. I think it's unfortunate that this is a movie that has to exist in the context. Well, it's the only way it would exist, and also what's great about it is precisely this. But it's it's got its advantages and disadvantages. One of the disadvantages is that it's a movie that's part of this long-standing franchise that if you're not if you're not a nerd in the West, you probably don't know about. In Japan, everyone kind of knows about it, but that's beside the point. Like, what they're doing, like the amount of production value that goes into the sound design and mixing on a movie like this. Again, you don't always think of it because it's like, oh, it's animated, it's this, that. I mean, dude, like we're talking like fighting robot things and alien things and all sorts of crazy shit. And the way it's mixed, like some of the action sequence, or really all the action sequences in this movie, again, the way you hear them, and it's exactly what I said about Dune. It's like there's an incredible score and soundtrack, which I also nominated, but like it never feels like you're losing out on the all of it just going off. And it like a lot of time and craft was put into it. And I think the result was very impressive. It's one of those movies that had like max volume, big headphones type. Drive My Car, another film from Japan, definitely the opposite of that. Drive My Car. It's funny you mentioned Tick Tick Boom, because I was going to say, like, obviously you have the songs and there's mixing involved in that. But in terms of sound design and mixing on Tick Tick Boom, I know it's one of your picks. I just think it is a good inclusion because the titular ticking and ticking, the way that's used is actually very effective.
They do kind of like, I want to call it like mini stomp in a couple of scenes where like they're literally just using whatever instruments or not instruments, objects are around to make some sounds. And it kind of, you see that that's a lot of his inspiration for city sounds, you know?
And one of the things I loved, and again, directly contributes to the sound and mixing, is the way, and when he's doing his workshop, and he keeps talking about, I want these drums, I want these synths. And they're like, you can't afford to do it. And then when you hear the song start and it's just the piano, and then you get the other instruments, and the way that's effectively done, and it's like doesn't draw your attention to it right away, and then it gets to the point story-wise where he deliberately draws it to your attention, but you realize, oh, it's been there for a few minutes now. And you're like, oh, I get it. I get the effect. That takes not only the musicians playing the instruments, that takes very competent mixing to get that right in space, and as the camera's moving around the space, there's all sorts of stuff involved in that context. So I think that's a great pick on your part. Similarly, though, not in anything involving music really at all. Now we're talking about a very quiet movie. I include Drive My Car because it is a very quiet movie. I think that actually is also an art form and something that people neglect a lot of the time. This film, I'm not talking like we're going like high concept with it, like a quiet place or something like that. I'm talking about like a very still moving drama about a very quiet character. I mean, Japanese culture, I mean, that's the irony of Japanese culture to me. Like if you're watching like things like Evangelion, where it's actually maybe on the more subtle end in a lot of cases, but like you watch like anime, it's like characters are yelling and screaming and emoting like crazy. That's kind of like what it is. The Japanese reality is often quite the opposite, which is maybe why they like that stuff. It's very introverted, very quiet, very still. And Drive My Car captures that entirely. And I think that when you hear, like, there's a couple things, it's right there in the title, in the car, the way they use the interior sound versus the exterior sound in in scenes where characters are driving is very expertly done, and very done like not just like, oh, they're doing it right, like done in a way where there's intention and effect. Like there's a scene where they're driving through rain, there's a scene where they're driving through snow, and when those sounds move in and out of the space, it's very effective and very intentional. So I really like that. In terms of score, I mentioned Dune. I think you got to talk about like the work Hans Zimmer does on Dune. And we talked a lot about it on our episode. Please go back and listen to our Dune episode. By the way, Dana, you see how this is a great way to just like pimp out old episodes? Yeah.
Pimp out old episodes. Pimping them out.
That's what we got to do. It's like, hey, if you're listening to this the first time and you mention this movie, it's like, oh, I kind of wonder what they think about it more.
We did a whole thing on it.
I did like 3 hours on it. So, it's there for you. We talked about all the dudes. We talked about David Lynch's Dune. We talked about Jodorowsky's Dune. We talked about Frank Herbert's Dune. We talked about all the dudes. I guess we didn't talk about the Sci-Fi Channel TV movie dudes, but that's I wasn't ready for that level. But yeah, so when we talked about it, like how vital the sort of enthusiasm in the collaboration between Hans Zimmer and Denis Villeneuve was because they were both these childhood fans of the novels. And then when they came to it, they were almost like, holy shit, we're really making this. Like, should we even be doing this? Should this even be allowed? And they were like, yes, we have to. Like, our teenage selves would be so mad at us today if they even heard us talking like this. so yeah, that just infects the music. When I think of that Dune score, and I used it in our episode, that little, I don't even know what instrument it is. It's like a windpipe or something. It's like that. Like that, I hear that shit. I'm like, yo, I'm like on Arrakis, and there's like sand. It's just awesome. I love it. So yeah, Dune, can't get enough of that. Tick Tick Boom, right? That was on both Fars. Tick Tick Boom. I mean, obviously it's a musical, and that actually was going to be my reason not to include it, by the way. Not to even just be anti-musical, but because here's how I would normally think of this. I would normally think of this like, well, I'm talking about scored soundtrack. I didn't specify this, but in my head, I'm like implying original. And this is not original to a movie. However, two things to keep in mind here that to me immediately reverse that in the context of Tick Tick Boom. Number one, most obviously important. If you know the movie what it's about, and you know the story what it's about, this will make sense to you. This is going to be the way a lot of people experience this for the first time. This is the way I experienced it for the first time. I've never seen any production of Tick Tick Boom on the stage. And not that many people, I imagine, have realistically, because I don't want to botch some of the details because it's actually pretty complicated. I was reading up about it last night. But like, there's multiple versions that Jonathan Larson himself did when he was still alive. And then there was a later version that someone else did that kind of restored some of the music that was lost, that he had cut out, and made other little tweaks and changes that he, like, in spirit would have approved of, assumedly, for various reasons. And then the movie had to take all of that and do its own adaptation of all of that. So it is a selective and designed thing from the movie's point of view that is not original. And notably, the movie kind of bypasses all this in terms of the way it credits it, because it says songs and score by Jonathan Larson, which is the right thing to do, like from a sort of personal
creative standpoint. Right.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, this is this guy's work, but that's also inversely the other reason why I think it deserves to be included, because I'm like, dude, this is the way most people are going to experience this. And from most people's perspective, like, this is how they know it. So it's like, this is bringing that music by him to people. It's like, it's obviously, if you've seen the film, it's a very kind of like, I mean, I'll say, Dana, and I did not expect it. I was like a fucking mess at the end of this movie. And I was like,
really?
Yes, I was kind of embarrassed by it, but like, I totally understood why it was affecting me so much. And I was like, wow, I did not expect to get hit like this. I honestly got emotional level I never get with anything. I was like compulsively like sobbing. And so it's embarrassing to say now, but I was. And yeah, I think that's a testament to what it stands for and who this guy was and the tragedy of his life. But it's a very powerful thing. So yeah, Tick Tick Boom, great things about that. I think it's worthwhile. Licorice Pizza, you know, there's only real one piece of score by Johnny Greenwood, who notably did the entire score for Power of the Dog, which is funny. When I was watching Power of the Dog, I kept saying, like, sounds like you're just kind of doing a There Will Be Blood Masters kind of score. Like, you're kind of copying Johnny Greenwood. And then I was like, oh, it just is Johnny Greenwood. Yeah. Which, in some level, obviously on a basic level, should make it okay. But then there's another level where I'm like, well, doesn't that mean he's just being redundant? This would be a reason not to include it. But when I think about the score soundtrack, so if I was going to veto myself, I'm not saying you should do this, Dana, please don't. I would veto Power of the Dog just because it's like, it kind of is a little bit, but it works. And if you watch that movie and you're not comparing it, if you're just like absorbing it on its own, I think it's very good. Evangelion, this is where I really wanted to say, like, again, because I'm assuming most people listening to this have not seen this movie. They have no idea what I'm talking about or why. Oh my God. The score. Shiro Sugisu, who did the score for the original TV series, has scored the other Evangelion movies. This guy went all out on this. This score is crazy. I feel like, I don't know if Hans Zimmer has ever seen it, but I feel like Hans Zimmer needs to be shown it, but like listen to it. Because Hans Zimmer would get ideas from this because he'd be like, that's what I always try to do. I always try to like combine like opera and rock and like crazy shit and choir chanting and like it's nuts. It's like a complete and like also like laid back, like almost like island style fucking like folk pop. It's a wild score and soundtrack. Absolutely wild. The main theme song that plays over the end credits and ending the scene is by Hikaru Utada is also great. Highly recommend that if you want to listen to a J-pop music, but even as a J-pop song, it's like it's very modern, very sleek and cool. But just the overall score, it's like, I mean, there's like again the set pieces and like just the absolute sheer epicness of it will blow your mind. Like I highly recommend it. It'll make you wonder. Okay. And I this was one of those things where because the soundtrack came out before the movie was released in the United States, I listened to the whole thing. And in some ways, it was like very cool because I was like, oh my God, this music's so epic. This gets me hype. It also made me think, I feel like I know the exact story of this movie from just listening to the soundtrack, presumably in order. And it made me give me a very good sense that was ultimately accurate, but it made me actually almost better because I then got to watch the movie and was surprised how many things weren't quite what I thought, but in a better way. They were better than what I thought in most cases, and nearly all cases actually. So great stuff. And I'll just one of the things I was about Licorice Pizza, circling back to that, is just like, you know, I said score or soundtrack. So the movie's just got a great soundtrack. You got Paul McCartney. You got
it really did, yeah.
Yeah.
It was great.
The Doors, everything.
Probably
that was great. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Bowie, yes. Yeah, I know you got your beats with that movie. All right, let's move on to best editing. Come on. If you've seen the movie, again, you'll know that one of the really genius things, and Mike Mills, I believe, used to be an editor at one point, like worked in music videos and stuff. But all his films have this sort of like, they use certain kinds of framing devices. He was very good about the way he kind of just seamlessly rolls with them as the story continues. And that's on full display in Come On. And each of his feature films since like starting with Beginners, I think he might have had a film before that, but I'm starting with literally the beginning with Beginners. They've handled it a little differently. But I think each one has actually been successfully. Well, no, I think Beginners is better than 20th Century Women, but Come On is really special is the point. And I think the editing plays a huge role in the emotional impact and the just sort of feeling of the movie, the sort of sense of the themes and all that. It relies on using this footage from these documentary interviews that Joaquin Phoenix, the character himself, is like integrating into his existence and therefore into the story. Mm-hmm. Now, Last Night in Soho and Zola are both films that we haven't mentioned so far. And they're good movies. Like, they're more middle ground movies, but I had to include them here because I think in both cases, they're a real testament to how editing can really make a movie that might otherwise be kind of mediocre, at least at the high end of like middle ground, and like, and arguably great movies at times. And so Last Night in Soho, I talked a little about it. There's a Cinphomaniac rapid fire where I went into it pretty thoroughly, even in that quick format. Edgar Wright's films are kind of synonymous with editing, actually. You go back, the Cornetto films, Baby Driver, they're all very meticulously constructed in the edits. Like, they're designed around the potential edits. Like, he kind of knows exactly how he wants to cut the movie and he kind of shoots to that. And he's often shooting and cutting to the music, and it's very complicated. Like, Baby Driver is maybe the most extreme example, but obviously, like, you go back to Hot Fuzz, there's all these crazy fast cuts. Last Night in Soho is different than those movies, but it's still very very well used editing. Like there's whole parts of the movie that would normally, and so maybe this is not always the movie's benefit, mind you, arguably, but not to cut my legs off here with my own argument, but there's parts of the movie where like in other movies that would take 20 minutes, it takes like 5 minutes here. And you don't feel like you're really missing anything. It's just like he's just like very smooth. And that's why the movies can come in at a shorter runtime, you know? So I don't know. There's an art form to it that I think really works. There's certain cross-cutting, certain tense scenes that I think are also well done. So yeah, Red Rocket, similarly, Red Rocket is a movie where it's hilarious in my opinion. I loved Red Rocket. I watched it like last week and I had expectations that I would really like it given the subject matter. I don't know. I'm very interested, going back to Boogie Nights, but this is also maybe for other things. I'm very interested in the lives of porn actors as like people. I think it's very funny. There's a lot of great humor that can be mined from it, and Red Rocket does it very well. And it's got its own unique take because the main character, Mikey, first off, he's a male porn star. I guess that's like makes him a little bit of a Dirk Diggler, but it's about like him going back to his very poor, low income, East Texas, like literally on the Gulf, town. And, it's like, he's basically just like trying to scam his way back to get back to LA. You know what I mean? He's just like, how can I like figure out how I'm going to get back there? Cause I don't really give a fuck about these people. I'm just pretending to like them so I can like figure out how to like get back. Right. And, he's just like, it's one of those movies where he's just like, kind of, I guess I could talk a little more when I talk about Siren Rex, but it's just relentless in this like pursuit. And the editing plays a great part. There's a great use of, believe it or not, it's like kind of the theme song of the movie, NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye. And the way this is done is very well done. Like the whole way the movie's paced, the whole just sort of like loose structure. There's one like scene where it kind of cuts forward in time and you're like, what the hell just happened? It's very well done in that way. It can be a little confusing, but on purpose. So great stuff. Licorice Pizza, I'm not even going to try to explain it. If you've seen the movie, you should know it's well edited. I mean, surprise. None of us have used any of our vetoes yet. So there's still 6 vetoes, 3 from each of us in play. Just putting that out there, raise the stakes.
Best cinematography.
Well, I do want to shout out the French Dispatch since we haven't really talked about it. Like the film.
We haven't really known.
Yeah, no, because it hasn't been brought up, but the film, I mean, truly, truly beautiful looking movie. And not just in the Wes Anderson-y ass Wes Anderson way. I think the reason I wanted to include it is because like a lot of things in the movie, and I think I did talk about it at least briefly on a previous pod, though I had planned to do a larger episode on it that hasn't materialized. Maybe that'll still happen. Maybe we'll do a Wes Anderson month. It'd be nice to talk about a lot of his movies, actually.
That would be fun.
Yeah. The French Dispatch to me is actually like Wes Anderson's like true, like I'm above all commercial concern. I'm just going to make a film that I really think is interesting to me. And I've evolved my technique now. And I'm actually in a place where I want to experiment with it. Like not like change direction, like still going further into this extreme of my particular au revoir, but like experiment with the boundaries of it. And so I think the French Dispatch does a brilliant job of doing that with really beautiful results. Robert Yeoman's the cinematographer, great legendary guy. Works with Wes Anderson a lot. Dune, Craig Fraser, amazing stuff. Greg Fraser. What's the big movie he's doing? Oh, yeah, I think he's doing The Batman. It's his next movie that's coming out like in a few weeks. That'll be exciting. So yeah, this guy's he's previously had shot The Star Wars Rogue One, which, say what you will about the rest of the movie. It's certainly a good looking Star Wars movie. Spencer is really great cinematography, I have to say, in subtle ways, but then also has these shots that just really like open up your eyes. You're like, whoa, really great. I don't want to say too much about Spencer because actually my favorite part about watching Spencer is that let me put it this way. If you're like, oh, Princess Diana biopic, that sounds boring. I was right there with you. If you're like, I fucking hate all things involving royalty and monarchy. It's disgusting. I can't stand it. I'm right there with you. This movie.
With the former,
it's not at all that. And with the latter, it is that in the right way. Let me put it that way. This movie is absolutely disgusting and horrifying, and that's why it's great. Anyway, yeah, and Kristen Stewart does a brilliant job playing into all that. I think the reason the vetoes haven't been used this far truly is because like you've done a good job of naming the films that I would have maybe included with a veto had they not been included, at least
Right.
one per category. So it's just made it like unnecessary.
Your list tends to be the ones that didn't quite make the cut for me as well. So
Yeah.
it's looking like that.
I think, look, screenplay is a category that I care a lot about, as you might imagine. It's a very tough category to narrow down, but like Dune would have been the one for me, maybe. And you got it in there. So I'm kind of just like, yeah, that's good enough for me. So we can move on to the fight you've all been waiting for. Oh my God, Dana, I can't believe you're going to do this.
So you act like you know what's happening.
Maybe I don't. Maybe surprise us. But I think, okay, I'll just say if you didn't listen to our Licorice Pizza episode, which, wait a minute. Nobody, well, as of this recording, nobody listened to our Licorice Pizza episode. I haven't put it up yet. But it will go up. Well, now I have to absolutely make sure it goes up. Otherwise,
Have to now.
Yeah, there will be no
I know what we're
tension.
talking
All
about.
the tension that I'm banking on this will not even be there. So, I mean, it was going to anyway. I made that point already, but definitely got to go up before this. So by the time you're listening to this, you will, if you've been following our show, have heard our Licorice Pizza episode. If you have not, I suggest you go back and watch it because I'm not even talking that much about Licorice Pizza, even though it's been nominated a bunch of categories because I did a lot of talking about it there. Like, listen to that. That said, one of the things you would know if you listen to it, and spoilers if you didn't listen to it, I gave you your chance. Dana really hates Alana Haim and hates the character that she plays of Alana, and hates. I really kind of let the whole thing.
Not a fan.
I tried to red pill her. I tried to red pill her back to the reality that Licorice Pizza is amazing. But I don't think I was that successful. I was.
Said no one ever. Think about the sentence itself and not even about the movie. No one would eat Licorice Pizza and no one would say it was amazing and no one would order it a second time.
Yeah, but
and I think that's why he named it that because he knew everyone feel that about Alana.
No, Dana.
She's a licorice on my
store,
pizza.
Dana.
She's
it was an actual
licorice
record
on
store.
my pizza.
God, you know what? Do you know there's probably a bunch of people who actually do eat pizza with licorice on it and like pollen and stuff.
Dear Lord, baby Jesus, help them.
All right, Ricky Bobby. Look, Dana, before you say anymore, I just say I don't feel like I genuinely, as of right now, unless I'm going to just find a backhand way to reactively spite you, I don't see a need to, veto any of yours. Penelope Cruz, I haven't seen Parallel Mothers, but I assume I would want to include her maybe if I did. Nicole Kidman, she's going to get a lot of awards. She might even win the Oscar. I think, it's a worthy inclusion. I'm sure she's great as Lucia Ball, whether I ultimately really care for the movie in question or not. Emma Stone, I really loved as Cruella. We did an episode on Cruella, so you can go back and listen to that.
I thought she was great. Cruella. And then we both agreed on Olivia Colman,
which actually was my lowest tier pick in the list. Not because look, here's what I'll say. So The Lost Daughter, even though I've nominated it in 2 different acting categories, I did not really like the movie. The movie definitely rubbed me the wrong way in several ways. But I think, and earlier when we talked about Jessie, we didn't really talk about her actually, but Jessie Buckley in the film, I think is phenomenal. Jessie Buckley is one of my favorite actors right now. So I love her. I think she's fantastic. I also love Olivia Colman. However, even though ultimately the sheer weight of what she was doing overpowered me enough that I felt it would be like deceitful not to include her in the category. And I didn't really have anyone else I thought needed it more. So it was an easy inclusion on that since I still had my 5 slots. But a lot of it, I'm just like, all right, I don't need more Olivia Colman shit. Like, Like, genuinely, I'm getting a little tired of it. Like, and I mean that with all due respect.
It's a lot.
Which is a lot. Which is a lot of respect. I have a lot of respect for it. But like, I'm just like,
she's getting all the work ever since
all the work.
Broadchurch.
It's
really
getting a little
off.
bit much. I don't, and especially in a movie like this, it's all of this movie's a little bit like, I definitely had like a whole pod worth of reaction to it, a whole rant about it. I didn't hate the movie. Like, I actually like the movie is doing a lot of things. It's very interesting, as they say, but I think a lot of it just ultimately kind of was like, that was a grueling experience and not necessarily in a good way. So that's kind of where I'm at.
No, I get that. And I think it's like that on purpose. Like, it made me feel, as someone who's in her mid 30s and like, it's about time for me to start having kids. It's made me feel a little bit more okay about my apprehensiveness and the fears that I have of what it'll do to me and my loss of self and my loss of identity. That tends to happen for mothers less than more so than fathers. It hit a lot of that. And I think that there was a lot of nuance in it too. But at the same point, I sort of agree with you in the sense that I probably am not going to seek it out to watch it another time.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't ever need to see it again.
Yeah.
At the same time, I do know that the performances that Olivia Colman was solid. I know what you mean. I just watched her as in that the Gardeners show as well.
Yes,
and then I've
saw that.
I've seen
I was
everything.
like, more
So
Olivia Colman.
I get it. We are saturated, and
yeah, I've had my
it's
saturation
if
point with her.
And so am I, and it's not her fault. If it was me and they're offering me these good parts, I'm going to take them all. I'm going to not sleep. I'm going to get it. I'm going to say
right.
yes to
No,
everything
that's the thing.
good.
I don't fault her for it, dude. She's been in the industry a long time, and she's worked hard for it. She's worked hard for it.
She's worked so hard. Yes.
Yeah.
She deserves it.
I think,
100%.
her Oscar acceptance speech, which she won, was like one of the all-time great Oscar acceptance speeches, if you ask me. So I love her. I want to exist in that moment forever. But like all things, there is this thing called the law of diminishing returns. And I feel like in this movie, I was hitting that a bit with her. And then, so yeah, if I was going to veto one of my own, I would veto that. But that's not how the rules work. I guess, just to what you're saying about overall Lost Daughter, I absolutely feel you on what you're saying. And like, one of the things I kept thinking, well, really after I watched it, was like, fuck, man, like, am I just being like a stupid dude who like just doesn't get the pain? But like, no, I think I get the pain just fine. It's just like, if that's not my issue with the movie, let me put it that way. I'm trying not to get too into it because I don't want to spoil it. And plus, I don't know if I remember exactly how to best articulate it all. But like, yeah, it's like a lot of the little things just adding up to making me feel like if the movie could have been about all the same things and the characters could have even done a lot of the same things, and if it was just pitched at a slightly different volume or slightly different frequency, it would work in a way that it doesn't. And I'm not even trying to put that on Maggie Gyllenhaal, who is the director and making her feature directorial debut. All the power to Maggie Gyllenhaal. Maggie Gyllenhaal is great. I think actually, this is kind of a spoiler, but I don't give a fuck. I'm going to say it. This is one of the funny things I had to take away from it. Was like, so you know how she's married to Peter Sarsgaard, right?
Wait, is she?
Yes, that's her husband. Like, they have kids together. They've been together a long time. She
not
clearly
know that. That's
loves her
awesome.
husband in a way that was like a little bit much, because the way his character is used in this movie, like, there's like a lot of weird fetishization of him, which again, in a broad stroke, I'm like, okay, yeah, women get like overly gazed at and feminized or fetishized. You can do it with a man. I'm fine with it. But just knowing that it's her specific husband or lover, it felt literally like the Will Ferrell lover sketch. I mean, his character basically is that guy. It's like, yes, my love. he's got like this bearded professor who's just like having sex with women. Okay. So anyway. It was a bit much. It was a bit much. If that was my only issue with the movie, I would say that was a good issue to have, and it would have made me like it more. And that's actually low key the thing I liked about it, even as it kind of repulsed me. I was like, this feels icky and weird. This feels like I'm like watching something I shouldn't see. So okay, let's
veto Alana Haim.
You're doing it.
I don't want
Just
her.
get it. Just
she
rip the
doesn't-
Band-Aid off. Just
No,
rip the Band-Aid off.
Rip it off. I don't want her to win. And the other one I would have vetoed, but I thought she was going to be on your list, but she wasn't. I was going to say Kirsten Dunst. I don't think I can. But you had her supporting.
Well, she's supporting.
Yeah, she's
Oh
supporting.
wow, you have a bone to pick with that one too.
Just because she's not, her character doesn't evolve. She's kind of doing a one-note performance, in my opinion, the whole time. And I think the movie in general reminds me of a dramatized 3 minutes of the Oregon Trail game that I played when I was in 5th grade. Somebody's going to die from dysentery, and let's stretch it out to make it a movie. That's kind of how I felt.
Wow, that's actually a great summary. Yeah, I know what you mean by the one note thing. I do think her character does change though, because first off, the note, I don't want to spoil it, but the note that you're obviously talking about is not there when she's first introduced per se. It comes a little later, but then it is like the bulk of the movie. And I mean, the whole story kind of hinges on it. So it's like, it's not one of those things you can just kind of change. But I think this is almost why I thought Kirsten Dunst was really good at it, is because she finds all the subtleties and notes, I feel like, within that very otherwise broad thing that she's doing. That's my thought. But yeah, you're obviously going to give her great, but you didn't veto her, and it's too late now. So you can't do that. If you want, I guess you're vetoing Alana.
I only veto Alana Haim. Yeah.
Okay. Alana's been vetoed. I'm now going to, I'll mix in some bagpipes and whatever, because I just want to say in reaction to your veto,
Oh my gosh,
this
no,
is a
you
fucking
need a-
travesty. This is a fucking
I want a
travesty.
guillotine sound.
Yeah.
I want a guillotine sound.
Oh, you want a guillotine sound? Fine, I'll put in a guillotine sound. But
What
seriously,
else? Yeah.
this is a fucking travesty. Dana should be ashamed of herself. I apologize to all our listeners that she thought it fit to do this. It's a damn crime. I don't even want to say more than that, because if you've listened to our Licorice Pizza episode, you know where I stand on all this stuff. And I think since then, since we recorded that, she was not nominated for an Academy Award. I don't think people felt about her the way Dana did. I just think it's one of those situations where, like,
everyone felt the same as me. Not surprised.
No, they didn't. There's definitely a lot of people riding
Not
for
surprised.
her. It's just one of those things where it's, even though it happens seemingly frequently, it's very hard to get like someone who's like in one of their first roles to get that category, unless it's like really,
That is fair.
truly like overwhelming support, which does happen. But like Alana didn't have
Captain
that. But
Phillip,
I think
that guy
you,
from Captain Phillip got that. got won an
exactly.
Oscar.
Like Barkhad Abdi. Yeah. No, you have that. Like what I said, when it's the little girl from Beast of the Southern Wild. Like when you have that ground swelling support, you can get it, which wouldn't be hard to do this year. I mean, that's one of the things about the Oscars. We just didn't have that kind of year. Sometimes you can have that. That's how it would normally take. I think though, if you by and large look at the reviews and critical reaction to Licorice Pizza, it's pretty consistent that Alana Haim's been praised. It's pretty consistent that other people like her. Other bodies have sought to include her. So it's just one of those things where you didn't make the Oscar cut. Big whoop. Which again makes it unfortunate that Dana decided to axe her. But oh well, I guess we'll have to move on. The question now is, do I axe one of hers in revenge? I'm not that petty, so no. I'll take the high road.
I had good picks.
Yeah, your picks are good. I mean, if I really thought one of them was egregious, I would.
I thought everyone worked really hard. Yeah.
Yeah,
Super deserving.
I'm not gonna ask anybody. There you go. We can move on. Or say what you want.
I got to use a veto, and you get to use this. We get to make a sound for the soundtrack for a veto.
Yes, I'm glad it got used. Not saying it won't get used in these final three categories either. By the way, Oscar Isaac in the card counter. So card counter, not a movie a lot of people seen. It's not getting a lot of awards recognition. It's a shame. Paul Schrader is amazing. I put him in the screenplay category, as you recall. Oscar Isaac, though, I mean, he has one scene in this movie. I mean, he's amazing throughout the movie. But there's one scene in this movie where I was like, oh my God, this is such the Oscar reel scene. Literally the Oscar reel. Oh God, I didn't even realize that the pun there. Such the Oscar reel scene. And it's a really fucking great scene where I don't want to spoil the movie, but he's confessing some really fucked up shit from his past. And like, he's just like so in it and animated. He's like, what we did. But it's like, it's good. It's good. It's not like overacting. It's really good. And if it works because of the subject matter he's talking about is something that is just not talked about at all, even though it's like one of the most consequential things in American history, certainly recently American history. And everyone just, I mean, for a long time, people were acknowledging that this was happening, but not in the right way. And then now I feel like it's like, you know, the world's moved on in even, which is fucked up because it means we're not learning the lessons of the past and, you know, all that. And actually, weirdly, feels like we're starting to get back down some of those roads, which are scary. If you've seen the film, you'll know what I'm talking about. I don't want to spoil it. Benedict Cumberbatch, The Power of the Dog. Now, man, I tell you, The Power of the Dog is interesting to me because, like, I definitely wanted, like it's stuff I like. I felt like I was watching Red Dead Redemption. You were comparing the Oregon Trail. But it's one of those movies that, like, the further you get into it, the more simple you actually realize it is. But that's actually a good thing in this case. Like, I've liked how ultimately simple the story really was. A very simple story. I could explain it in like 3 sentences if I wanted, maybe less. And Benedict Cumberbatch, like, at first I was feeling a little shaky about him, honestly, even though like him in this role was hyped up, and I was like, oh, like, cool, he's doing a Jane Campion movie, he's playing a cowboy. But that's the thing, I was like, I don't know, Benedict Cumberbatch gets weird with his accent work sometimes. And I'll say that he doesn't really sell the accent at all here, but you don't care, I guess is really what I'm saying. Because like most of what he's doing, his performance is very physical. He's definitely channeling Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood a lot, but like, it's good. It's good. It's for a good reason. I mean, this movie's obviously very, even though Jane Campion's such a storied filmmaker in her own right and one who predates PTA, I mean, I can't help but think the movie is very, like it or not, inspired by There Will Be Blood, visually, sound-wise, certainly. I mean, you don't hire Johnny Greenwood unless you're thinking of that. I just like, oh, coincidence. So like, no, come on. That's like giving the game away, basically. But I don't mind because the Paul Thomas Anderson movies are dope, especially The Master and There Will Be Blood, which this movie has a lot of shades of, including casting Jesse Plemons, right? So there you go. Mm-hmm. So I mentioned Red Rocket. Simon Rex, if you don't know, Simon Rex used to be just like an MTV guy way back in the day. And then he was in the Scary Movies, like Scary Movie 3 and 4 specifically. So like, which we're kind of like the soft reboots of it.
Start too, you know. Can't knock the.
Oh, I would say movies. I would, but no, it wasn't not another teen movie before that, or maybe no, it wasn't.
Oh,
we're on the same time.
Right. I don't know.
I always think of Not Another Teen movie as like the Chris Evans origin movie, which is so funny to look back at. What a weird movie. That movie's so weird. Definitely. Like, it's funny because it's so problematic, but it like the source material is also super problematic, arguably more. So it's like, by that I mean, what's the one, the Freddie Prinze Jr. movie? What is that one called again?
I can't remember.
Basically, the whole, I forget what it's called. The whole plot, and it's like, it's kind of like one of the cycling varied on plots in this whole subject. That's got to be your next childhood Venn diagram. Oh fuck yes, I finally figured it out.
Okay,
the late 90s, early 2000s teen like romance movie. Yes, that's it. Oh man, we can even limit it to the Shakespeare based ones, which this one technically might be. I don't remember. Which there are a ton of. Like, if you don't know that, there's a lot of these movies. That's just why it's perfect for genre Venn diagram. The Freddie Prinze Jr. movie with Jennifer Lee Cook, is that what her name was? Yeah. Too many Jennifer Lee's things. It's like, oh, girl is nerdy and ugly, but I'll make her hot and prove to other guys that I can, like, whatever, humiliate this girl by bringing her to. It's so ridiculous. It's like, what?
The old ugly duck thing. You're talking about She's All That.
She's All That. Yes, that's what it is. She's All That. And it's like so ridiculous because it's like I'm ugly because I paint pictures. It's like, what? It's such a non sequitur. Basically, any girl's not a cheerleader is ugly. Or like a loser. Which again, not another teen movies making fun of this stuff, but it's also clearly like making fun of this stuff in the context of like, well, it's still kind of normal, which is why we have to exaggerate it. But really, like, they could have underplayed not She's All That, and it would have been just as ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, oh man, that whole subgenre of movies was ridiculous. I will say, guaranteeing that she'll be included, but if we do this, I know that Miranda, my sister, will have a conniption if she's not included because she is. Well, I mean, I would actually be a crime not to include her because she is kind of an expert on the genre. I'll say it's one thing where I would be like, no, she knows every movie. She's seen them all a million times. She knows like all the ins and outs of them. So yeah. Yeah, so Simon Rex. Oh, man, that's what I was talking about. Simon Rex was in the scary movies. And then I don't know where the fuck he's been for 20 years, but not on my TV screen or movie theater. And I don't know, for whatever reason, Sean Baker, and this is one of those cool things directors will do sometimes that I'm usually down for, is like, they'll just go to somebody that no one expects or thinks much of and be like, you should star in my movie and I'm going to try to get you an Oscar. Now, it didn't work out with Simon Rex. Like, he was not nominated. I think when you see the movie, it's very obvious that even though it's very good and should get recognition, it's the last movie that people would ever include in the Oscars. Like, Sean Baker's Florida Project was obviously very well Oscar nominated, but that's a little different. Like, this movie is like kind of like really a capital C comedy, honestly, which I think is great. It's like I was laughing every 2 seconds. But more importantly, its character, and this is why I love Simon Rex, because I'm into this, it's just a douchebag. He's just a douchebag, and like, he does not change. He does not repent. He does not grow. Spoiler alert, none of that. He just like is like, no, I'm going to keep you the same. No, like rethinking his life, even when like really bad stuff happens to him, that when any other movie would be like the reason that character like reconsiders their life. Never happens. So yeah, I think that's great. I think he's really good in the movie. He's very funny, very charming. The movie's very problematic, but it's supposed to be. Like, he's like trying to date a 17-year-old girl and make her a porn star is the plot. So very messed up, very not like PC, but again, in a fun way. Andrew Garfield, I kind of was like, okay, I gotta watch Tick, Tick, Boom, because in my head I was like, not that I was artificially willing this into existence, but I was like, I already think Andrew Garfield should get nominated for Spider-Man No Way Home. I think the Oscars did him a disservice not including him for that, to be honest with you. But I also was like, I know Andrew Garfield is also in this movie in a leading performance that probably will get an Oscar nomination, and given how high I'm feeling on him, I'm sure he's amazing in this too. And I'll get over the fact that I don't really like musicals and kind of have some minor bones to pick. Well, not so minor with Mr. Lin-Manuel Miranda. But I will say all that is so irrelevant to me when I'm watching Tick, Tick, Boom. And I knew I actually had high hopes that it would be. Like, what I wanted out of Tick, Tick, Boom was exactly what I got, in the sense that like, this was a movie that was like very raw, very real, taken from what Jonathan Larson made about himself. So it just puts you in that time and place. It puts you in the conditions of someone who actually is like dead broke and struggling. It puts you in the position of someone who is like watching people all around him die and just like feeling like, on the one hand, he's very part of this community, but on the other hand, really is not at all, and can just walk away from it at any time, but like doesn't, for like almost the wrong reasons, you know? And it's got all that. And like, Andrew Garfield fucking sells it to the 20,000th degree. Sometimes when you watch an actor work as hard as he's clearly working in this, it can be almost off-putting and like, so actor bullshitty, whatever, stagey, trying to get the Oscar. This, no, he has such like just true like heart that like you cannot say that about it. Like, I would be like angry actually if someone tried to suggest that to me. I'd be like, no, you literally might not have a pulse, or I don't know, maybe you just don't relate to the story in a way I obviously do. But yeah, he's just fucking giving 110% like on every fucking scene, every fucking moment. He's just like going for it, and it works, and he carries the whole movie. I mean, I'm not saying Lin-Manuel's direction is bad. I think it's good, but
the storyline for his character, the way that he draws on it is great.
Yeah, the supporting performances are good, but like it's kind of like he's in a league of his own, but the movie kind of works around that, so it's good. Last but certainly not least, I have to mention it because we haven't really talked about Drive My Car enough, even though I've nominated it in almost everything I could. Hidetoshi Nishijima plays the lead character Ryusuke, and it's what, like I was getting at before with Japanese culture and like society, and this movie is very focused in a particular character going through something very particular. I don't want to spoil at all, but it's like kind of basic to the premise. Let's just say it involves grief, right? He's kind of just trying to do his job and do his thing and like move on. But like, he has this very particular kind of ritual that he seems to rely on. And the whole premise of the movie is basically, it involves driving his own car. The whole movie's like, his job tells him, you have to have a driver. We're not letting you drive your own car. He's like, that's part of my process. I will say this, he's an actor. So like part of his process is he learns his lines in the car. He's also the stage director of a play. I don't want to spoil too much more about it. So he's an actor who's directing a play that he used to star in. It's like a Chekhov play. Like you would know it probably. He's like, no, that's how I learned my lines. I learned my lines by driving in my car, as the title implies. And they're like, you have to have a driver. And the driver is a young woman who's like, at first, just like, and I also nominated her for best leading female, Toko Mura. And I almost wouldn't have thought, if you asked me at the first half of this movie whether I would have nominated her, I would have said no, just because like, oh, she's doing a good job, but it's like one of those performances where it's like just kind of not saying or doing much, like, you know what I mean? And that can work. It can serve the movie, but this movie's 3 hours long. It very slowly and meticulously builds this relationship and builds the emotions and builds your understanding of everything. And so by the time you get to the last like 20, 30 minutes, you're just like, oh my God, you're deep with these people. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like the power of the most subtle gestures between them. And like, it's not all subtle. Like they give like very deep confessions and monologues and things pop off, but it's like the movie takes its time building to all that stuff. So it's incredible. It's an incredible film. Denis Villeneuve, he's got his boyhood dream for Dune. He realized it. He arguably, we talked about this on our own pod, but like arguably greatly succeeded where perhaps Lynch had failed or Jodorowsky couldn't even get to start. So that's a big achievement. Paul Thomas Anderson making Licorice Pizza. It's like, again, he's always great, the greatest art. I mean, other than Lynch or Terrence Malick, but really great. I mean, given the way Terrence Malick's recent films have been, yeah, I'd say, and even Lynch's lack of output, I think it's without question, I guess on that basis, Paul Thomas Anderson is, other than Scorsese, the greatest director. See, I keep giving caveats, but you get what I'm saying. The greatest American director. He's one of the greatest. He made my favorite movie of all time that I think is the best movie of all time, The Master. So there you go. Licorice Pizza is a long way from that, but it's still a really great film. And I think what I really like about it for him as a director is that it was his opportunity to kind of, I don't know, it's like he's talked a lot about it. He's been very public about this movie, which is also telling to my point. Like, kind of just like relax and like kind of go with the ride and like, you know, pass things on in a weird way to a new generation, not to a new generation as director, but like to his, you know, Philip Seymour Hoffman was his guy. Now it's his son. Alana Haim is someone he's like kind of watched, no, not grown up since a child, but grow up into it like an adult woman from being like a very young woman, you know? And so I feel like there's that sense. And like, he's obviously, his own kids now are teenagers, at least the oldest one. So it's like, I think it's, the film very much is in conversation with all that. And I think it's just interesting to watch a director be that way with his material. Mike Mills doing Come On, Come On, again, just bringing this very delicate intimacy and introspection. And I mean, working with a kid, like Woody Norman, like it's tough, man. And he got that right. Like, Come On, Come On is, I mean, honestly, this has been a big year for movies that genuinely actually made me cry. Come On, Come On. Yeah, I swear I'm not a crier, but Come On, Come On, Drive My Car, Tick, Tick, Boom, like all did that. So there you go. Yeah, actually, and lastly, I mean, it's a little bit more like, oh God, I can't believe I'm going to say it, but it's true, it did a bit, is Evangelion, which, again, I recommend if you're really interested in. I recorded an extensive podcast talking about this movie for the fans, really. But yeah, look, I said it best on all those episodes, but I really had to include Anno here because even more than the next category, this movie and what affects me so profoundly about it actually is the testament of what it says about this man as a director, this man as a creator, as an artist. And I've talked a lot about his biography because it's obviously not only with this movie, but with some of the stuff we covered earlier, when we talked about Miyazaki and Nausicaa, like he worked on that movie. That's how he got his start and eventually spun off his own career. And this is a guy who's been very candid and his work has been very open to it, to the point of being like, you know, very difficult in some ways, about the fact that he was a dude with a lot of depression and a lot of very messed up issues that made him very, you know, had a hard time. And he's made interesting art out of those feelings. But I think, you know, the whole journey to go from where he was that in the mid 90s to where he ends up, and he takes like this 9-year break where it's like, I'm not going to finish the series because it's just like, I can't do it. For him to then like come back and finish it and go out on a note as high as I believe he went out on, and a note that's like reflective of the entire experience, I think is a good testament that few people will ever replicate. I mean, like some authors, like if George R. R. Martin eventually makes the last 2 Ice and Fire novels and they're like these, like, I don't know, beyond even expectation masterpieces, okay, maybe he'll have had a similar thing. But yeah, it's a real testament to him as a person and a filmmaker, that he's like managed to come a long way and made that journey like part of the story in a lot of interesting ways. And I explain all that on the episode, so I'm not going to get into it, but testament to him. And lastly, Ryusuke Hamaguchi directed Drive My Car. Not a filmmaker I was really familiar with at all. Apparently one of his previous movies is 6 hours long. So I'm like, yo, at least this guy's with me on fuck it, make movies as long as you want kind of path. So I appreciate it. He actually has another movie that just came out like already now after Drive My Car. So getting very prolific, definitely a very competent filmmaker. Like the direction in Drive My Car is top notch. So I stand by these picks very strongly. And I'm not a saint either. I'm not a saint because I didn't veto anything of your picks. I'm not a saint. Genuinely, I'm so satisfied with my own nominees that I just like don't feel the need to do it. So yours are all just nice bonuses, honestly, on my as far as I see the pool. So this brings us to the last thing to do, which is to actually vote on the winners and then read them out. Let's go now, one by one. You'll give yours, I'll give mine. If they're the same, they get the Granddaddy Cinphomaniac award. They don't, they get the Marcus. If they do, they don't, they get our respective individual awards, which is not any less an honor. It's just like a special way of saying, like, you know, the way Ebert and Roper used to do, or Siskel and Ebert, it's like 2 thumbs up, 1 thumb, each gets 1 thumb. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that. Kind of like that. Best supporting female. Who you got?
I choose Regina King for The Harder They Fall.
For me, I went with Harriet Sansom Harris for Licorice Pizza. I think it's like a 1-scene performance for the ages. And I love something about a 1-scene performance in this category. So there you go. Best supporting male.
I choose Ty Sheridan from The Tender Bar.
Ooh, wow. I wasn't expecting you to pick that. Okay. I guess I haven't seen The Tender Bar. That's another one I didn't. I picked Andrew Garfield for Spider-Man No Way Home. Yep. And, you know, look, Masaki Okuda, Bradley Cooper, Margaret Clemens, they're all phenomenal. And a lot of people would have a problem me picking Andrew Garfield over any of them. But I'll just say, and this is not just me trying to make a populist proclamation, we talked about it. The moment where Andrew Garfield fucking saves Zendaya has got to be one of the greatest, like, cathartic movie moments collectively ever. So
oh my God,
none of these other guys have that. And the moment with Masaki Okuda, Drive My Car, that I'm thinking of when you see the movie is also one of the most amazing scenes ever. But oh well, that's that.
Best visual effects. I picked Spider-Man No Way Home.
All right, Spider-Man No Way Home it is for visual effects. I picked The Green Knight.
Oh, that was the one I thought maybe we would give the Cinphomaniac award to, because I thought you would pick Spider-Man.
No,
but I haven't seen
no,
The Green Knight,
no,
so I don't know.
No. I think when I talked about it in Deliberation, if what I said about The Green Knight, like, you know, it's more impressive to me when you're doing something on a budget than it is when you have literally unlimited money. But that's just me. Best sound design and or mixing. What do you got?
I like Tick Tick Boom.
Okay. I picked Dune. Best score or soundtrack. What'd you pick?
I picked Dune.
Ooh, wow. I picked Evangelion on this one. I love Hans Zimmer's score for Dune. It'll ever forever stand up. But like, as I might have mentioned when we talked about Deliberation, like the Evangelion thing is like it actually, I feel like it's almost like I mean, it is underrated just because most people in the United States have never seen it. But like, it's underrated, I think, even in my own head sometimes. I'm like, it thing's crazy. It's crazy. Best editing.
I picked The Lost Daughter.
I picked Licorice Pizza. Best cinematography.
I picked Dune.
I also picked Dune. So there you go. We did it.
Oh
We did it.
God.
One, at least one thing in one category is getting the official Cinphomaniac
One
award.
Cinphomaniac award.
Yes. There we go. We did it. We did it.
So best screenplay, I picked Coda.
I picked Drive My Car. Best leading female.
I picked Penelope Cruz in Parallel Mothers.
And even if Alana Haim hadn't been eliminated, I would have still picked this probably. Kristen Stewart for Spencer. I thought that was just that's one I'll always.
Wow.
Look, Toko Mira, love
Okay.
her, but yeah, Kristen Stewart, I'll give it to her. Best leading male performance.
Ben Affleck for Tender Bar. And I'm surprised at myself at that. But
Oh man, I'm surprised by that. Almost, yeah. Huh. Okay. I don't think we would have had the same pick no matter what. Just seeing that you haven't seen this movie yet, but I went with Hitoshi Nishijima for Drive My Car. Very subtle but very powerful connection you form.
cool.
Yes. Best director.
So I know it's weird to pick the best director didn't direct someone who I think's the best actor, but I thought John Watts was essential to Spider-Man. And I think he deserves best director.
I think you are. Make a very compelling case for that. Best director
The
was
script's all
very.
over the place.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that needed to be, there's so many balls juggling in that court that he needed to manage. And I think he did it.
Best director was a tough one, very tough one for me. It's the one I'm probably most like reeling, which is ironic given who I picked. But I picked Paul Thomas Anderson. Normally that would be like the easiest choice, but here it really wasn't because Villeneuve, Ano, Hamaguchi, Mills, less Mills, but the other three, I could make a very
Sure.
compelling case for me personally, at the very least, if not just universally. So there you go.
Mhm.
Best picture, drum roll. Maybe I'll put the actual sound.
Drum roll, you might have got an inkling that it was my favorite movie of the year. The Harder They Fall, I think, is the best picture of 2021. The script, the acting, it was all solid. It was all solid.
I still haven't seen it, so I can't really comment. I know a lot of people liked it, but yeah, it's certainly not one that's been getting terribly recognized, which I think is a
No,
cool thing. I
definitely
think it's a
not.
good thing. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a sign of a person that have actually some actual taste, actually, on that point. So yeah, The Harder They Fall. I will check it out. For mine, I picked, maybe unsurprisingly, unless you're only going by who I picked for best director, and my goal wasn't necessarily to split the difference at all, actually. I was very totally independent thinking on it. But best picture, Drive My Car. It's who I'm going to be rooting for in the Oscars. I don't just think they can win. I want them to win. I'm going to be fucking pissed if some other movie wins, actually. Even if it's Licorice Pizza, to be honest. Like, well, that would be the one that
Really?
would least piss me. Yes, because
Yeah.
Licorice Pizza, before I saw Drive My Car, was my number one, but I never felt great about it. At one point, I considered making Come On, Come On. Come On, Come On's really good, but I don't know. It felt like, okay, but Licorice Pizza is Licorice Pizza. And then Drive My Car is just like on a whole different stratosphere. So I'm just like, thank God. Drive My Car just makes it so, like, that's on level with PTA's best movies. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. Licorice Pizza is not as good as some of PTA's other movies, even though it's still very good. So Drive My Car is one I can unambiguously go, that's the booty. That's the movie. I don't know why I said booty. I don't know. All right. Well, there you have it. We only gave out one true Cinphomaniac award, unfortunately.
Only one.
But you know what? It's because we had a very diversified nominee
Is it
list.
ironic too that it's for cinematography?
Yes and no, because I think, if anything, Dune getting best cinematography should be the most gimme ever. And if it
Right.
doesn't actually
I
win,
agree.
I'll be fucking pissed. So
I agree.
yeah, we picked the right. If we only had to have one to agree on, we absolutely actually picked the right one to agree on.
Yes.
There should be no dissent on that. So, all right, there you go. First annual Cinphomaniacs 2021 in the hole. I would say we can move on,
annual.
but first annual. There will be many more. We might revise the rules in the future, but I like our rules. I think it worked out well. It worked out pretty much like I expected.
Fun.
It was fun.